tired, just stop, take down the middle of the road, stretch out.
Work.
Come on, come on, come on, come on.
I think you stopped for a hot dog along the way, which you do not.
It didn't go on.
Okay, Kirby, all set.
We're going to try and nail you. Take us away.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, September 14th. Mr. Clerk, would you mind leading us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we please remain standing? Please be advised that Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker ordered the United States flag and the Commonwealth flag lowered to half-staff at all state buildings from sunrise until sunset Saturday, September 12th, in honor of Specialist David Hazen Johnson, United States Army of Lexington, who died on August 12th. Moment of silence, please. All right, there's one more, too. Sorry. Again, Charlie Baker has ordered the United States flag, Commonwealth flag, lowered at the half-staff of the buildings on Friday, September 11th, in honor of the individuals who lost their lives on September 11th, 2001. Moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. All right, for tonight's meeting, organization, 6:30, pledge allegiance, read mail. 6:35, joint meeting with the Finance and School Committees for 2007 budget guidelines. 7:05, updates, public input and member updates. 7:15, Chapterland, Cooper Farm, 180 Great Road, and K Property, Grimes Lane. 7:45, November 2nd, special town meeting articles. 8:40, LELD request to install a pad switch for Littleton, on Littleton Common. 8:50, Town Administrator, Assistant Town Administrator, ratify collective bargaining agreement, Police Union, Community Compact update. 9 o'clock, other business, minutes approval. Mr. Bergman.
Mr. Chairman, just one thing in the mail packet. A lot of the things that happened are ending up as agenda items for the board to review and act on tonight. But I did want to call to your attention that the Mass Municipal Association will be having a series of morning legislative breakfast meetings during the month of October. If any members are interested in attending, they usually get a good turnout from legislators in our area. The one that is closest to us would be on October 16th in Concord, at the Concord Townhouse, but there are other ones throughout the Commonwealth. That's it.
All right, thank you. School Committee, Finance Committee, are we in session? We have enough members and quorums? I see Finance, School?
We don't have a quorum. We don't have a
We don't have a quorum, okay. It's, we're talking about fiscal year 2017 guidelines tonight. Bonnie, you want to
Sure.
jump in?
We are at the beginning stages of planning for the 2017 operating budget and capital plans. So we need to issue the budget directive to the departments and other commissions. To wrap up 2016, we did leave town meeting in May in balance. We had a small surplus of a few $1,000s. Through the close of the fiscal year and receiving state aid and finalizing our local receipts, we do have a small surplus of about $150,000, primarily through local receipts, through excise receipts. We are proposing that those funds be used to provide some supplemental funding for 2 capital projects that we've been unsuccessfully trying to bid several times over the last year. The first one is for the fuel facility upgrades, and that's $111,000, and $38,000 for the Council on Aging kitchen upgrades. Both projects have been out at least 3 times over the last year, and we haven't been able to secure a contract with the funding that we have available. These appropriations should be able to move these projects forward and get them done for the year. So, we're looking forward to
Is that what the issue has been? You've heard back from contractors? Just
It's funding,
okay.
absolutely.
All right.
I think the estimators were low on these particular projects.
Okay.
Do you want to add that the COA did de-scope to stay within the current bounds?
Right, but there's still some additional work that they'd like to be able to
Yep.
do beyond the newly revised scope, so this
Yeah.
would allow them to.
There is an RFP on the street now.
Right.
So that being said, we jump into the 2017 through 2021 budget planning. We keep a 5-year rolling document. Actually, it goes out more than 5 years, but we really focus on the 5-year window to kind of see what our financial health looks like. So we're starting with the 2017 capital and operating budgets. I did attach, again, the budget calendar for your review. The Finance Committee has reviewed it and approved it. The school committee is also in receipt of it. Based on the uncertainty with state aid levels, we haven't heard anything, at this early point on what state aid might look like. I'm recommending that we do 2 budget documents together. The first one is the level staffing, which would be the same staffing levels as 2016, inclusive of any COLAs that might be required under the collective bargaining agreements or any step increases. And again, with a 2% salary adjustment projected for non-union employees, with expenses level funded at the 2016 level. So that would just keep our staffing where we are. The second budget would be the mission budget, which would be prepared with the staffing levels that the department head or the appointing authority feels is necessary to provide the sufficient service to the community. Any additional staffing or increases would need to be submitted with full documentation justifying why that is needed and what the expected outcome would be, whether it's just increased service or decreased public safety incidences or increased revenue if you need to spend money to make more money, so that the boards can deliberate productively throughout the budget process. So I'm not certain that any of the mission budget requests could be met at this point. We're still very early in the process, but it's important to identify what the costs of those are in case we do have additional monies become available, and it's the board's desire to do so.
And that's consistent what we've been doing too,
Yes.
so.
Yes, the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Last year, this helped us augment some other, like veterans benefits. We were able to increase to meet the caseload that's being generated in this type of environment, and address the legal budget, which has been historically underfunded. So, let's see. The other thing that is within the adopted financial policies, the town department budgets and the capital plans will be due in electronic format by October 27th. The school department would need to submit initial budget projections and capital plan documents in electronic format by the same date. We understand they're going to be preliminary at the school level at that time of the year. Their detailed budget wouldn't be due until December 15th. And again, that's part of the financial policies that were adopted by the boards. In looking at the projections for revenues for fiscal 17 through 21, I'm using the following assumptions: a 1% increase in local receipts, which would include excise, department fees, and et cetera. A 1% growth factor for school state aid, a 1% growth factor for municipal state aid. New growth is pretty aggressive, but we feel that this is attainable. $900,000 in new growth for fiscal 17, $500,000 for 18, and $300,000 for years 19, 20, and 21. These numbers are based on what we know is permitted at this point. We might need to adjust them depending on how contractors move forward with their projects. But based on what is permitted in the pipeline, $900,000 for 17 is accurate. But we will monitor them as we go through the year. On the expense side, within the budget, I have a 3.3% average growth in town departments, which is made up by including any assumptions for steps and COLAs that are due in fiscal 17 and 18. And we don't have any collective bargaining agreements that go out beyond that, so it's 0 for those 19 through 21. 0% increase in operating expenses. On the school side, I've got a 3.3% average increase in the school appropriation, which would be a 4% increase in 2017, or $690,000, 3.5% in 18, and 3% in 19 through 21. And I still have a 10% average growth in fringe or employee benefit costs, which it's maybe a little bit light, but it's been reflective of what our increases have been over the last few years. We saw about 5 years ago increases in 14, 15% range. So lately it's been between 7 and 11%. So I think the 10% is a decent number to hold with right now. For capital planning, Based on, again, the preliminary estimates, we are looking at about $2 million available for capital funding or other one-time expenditures. $962,000 of that would be funded through the accumulated debt service reductions and about $1 million from undesignated fund balance. It's similar to what we spent in 2016 at $1,950,000. All of these items are funded, again, within the levy limit. There's no capital exclusions proposed at this point. This would just be used for equipment and other one-time expenditures. We do, in the worksheets, incorporate the fire station debt service amounts starting in fiscal 17 forward. The assumption does show that those debt service payments will be funded inside the levy limit. I do assume that the vote will be taken will incorporate a debt exclusion ballot vote. We have some differing votes on the Finance Committee versus the Board of Selectmen, and so those policy decisions will need to be dealt with going forward.
In regards to the fire station you're talking about?
Correct. But we are using the debt service payments inside the levy.
Sure.
Additional expenditures for capital and reserves could be considered at this point, and I would request that the Financial Policies Working Group reconvene to look at if there are additional amounts that could be expended, either through undesignated fund balance or overlay surplus, which we have a small amount for, just to make sure that we're mindful of the bond rating and what reserves we need to keep intact. So I'm relatively optimistic for 2017. With these assumptions, there's a small surplus of $75,000. I will say that this is the first time since I've been here that with these projections that there hasn't been a deficit projected. It is because of the new growth. There is a very aggressive new growth figure due to the projects that are coming online. So that's really what's driving it.
Still very static as far as the state funding goes. I mean, you know.
Yeah. The state funding, it's been very flat in the last few years. This fiscal year, we got a small increase of about $31,000 over what we had projected. Sometimes the local aid receipts, the state aid receipts go up, and then the assessments go up, so you're netting to
Zero.
nearly zero.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult process.
School committee, questions?
Just a couple of things. We're early in our budget process at this point. I think the budget subcommittee met for the first time or second time just last week there to kick the process off. I think just looking at a couple of things, when you mentioned a few numbers there, I was just quickly going through a couple of my notes there. This year we've had an increase of 38 students in the district there, so I'm not sure what that will actually translate to Chapter 70 changes there, because I think if I did the math, that's 2% student population increase, and I think you just said a 1% change in our state aid there. So it'd be interesting to see how that works its way through the numbers throughout the year here, because I think we're watching our enrollments here as those housing developments come online.
We'll take anything they want to give us.
Well, no, I mean, it'd be just interesting to see, since we do know exactly how many new students we have this year on it there, and I just noted the timelines of the plan there. We'll just need to make sure they mesh up with our plans at this point here. I think that's all that I had for just general things at this point.
Very good. Finance committee.
I haven't seen all that information yet, so it's all, have some time to go through it at our next meeting. We'll go through it in detail. Freddie, anything you want to say? Because you're
No.
take the notes as you go along.
No, I think got some big ticket items potentially sitting in front of us with if Cooper pops, if K pops, along with the fire station in the offing. And we haven't really reviewed or re-reviewed the updated capital plan. So I think we want to make sure whatever we do sort of doesn't kick too much off that plan that we've tried to put together over the last several years.
Yeah, and the capital, there's also the library still, they're all doing work on that, and the roads need some more money, in my opinion, but.
So I just think that that's an area where this year maybe is a little more focus that we all ought to spend some time on, because there might be some opportunity there.
Sure. Board members.
And one of the things that was mentioned too, the turf fields could be something that would come up too.
Mr. Revolving?
No, I think we're right on schedule where we usually are about this time of year. And once the departments come forward with at least some preliminary numbers, then we're just a bit better informed. We can start helping with more guidance. I think what we're going to do this evening, as far as the motion that we're going to propose here, takes us down the same road we have been. We put a lot of good policies in place. I thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, FinCom. A lot of these things are helping us guide, and it's really making the process very smooth for us. So, for tonight, I'm sanguine.
Mr. DeCoste?
Yes, I'm sanguine as well. Being new to the process from this side, I really appreciate all the effort and the work that you put into it, Bonnie, and it made it a lot easier for me to understand it, immerse myself in it, and with all the input that everybody does throughout this process, I think this is a great starting point. Appreciate it.
And, go ahead.
Yeah, just one other thought. You said that there's 37 or 8 incremental kids in the school this year. Is the 40B pretty well filled up, or is there a large group, a large number of the 38 net coming out of that
It's in my backyard and Paul's backyard, so 2 of the 3 apartment buildings are built and are occupied. I don't know how full they are at this point. It looks like maybe about 15 or 20 of the houses up in the front are built and occupied at this point. I haven't driven past at what time the school buses come to see how many students came specifically from those sections, but one more building is not opened yet. Okay. And then there's probably 20 more houses that they're going to be, they haven't started building them yet. Okay. But I expect next summer that those will be built.
So the likelihood of those impacting us, maybe the apartments might impact us a little bit later in the year, but the houses are likely to be the next year impact, or?
Well, the condos, so houses, condos, 56, right, Darrell?
I think 56.
Yeah, 56 of those, 2 3-bedroom types, and I don't remember the breakout now in the 2 and 3 bedrooms. And then the resulting 144 units of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom garden-style apartments in the 3 different buildings. Let's see, through the 16th of September is when I believe the 3rd building was supposed to be getting close to start occupancy, if I remember correct. And Chief's giving a nod behind me there. So that'd be the 3rd building gaining occupancy. There's 2 different management companies. One manages the condos, and that's for sale for the condos, and the other is rental for the garden-style apartments. It certainly is our best interest is to be able to have an opportunity to meet with those 2 agencies and at least get a ballpark figure. We don't need to know who moved into what house, but if they've got some sort of demographics where they can say, yeah, we've got 100 kids that just moved in at a school age, it'd be good, some good numbers to know. And that's something that I'd like us to pursue here on the Board of Selectmen level, is to engage with them and help out with the schools too, providing the information we learn.
I just think whatever early warning we could get, if we get to the point where it's a step function because of that, how quickly can we react to it? That's all.
And then I was just checking through my notes here, and I recognize this might not be a fully coordinated position with the school committee, but I think as we look at building our budget, you use the term level staffing and mission budget. I think we're going to probably be looking at a required services budget, not necessarily a mission budget, which is what we would like to have if everything broke well. But level staffing doesn't work quite the same because we have to shift staffing around depending on the specific services that we need to offer for the students, depending on whether the special ed pieces or the other pieces there. So there's required services that we have to provide. And I think that's how we'll probably be looking at how we build our first version of the budget. So I just wanted to sort of use a slightly different term than you have in there, because depending on what we have to do and those additional students that came into the district may change our staffing profile some.
Okay, all right. I think, being in this seat for 7 years now, from where we were to where we are is leaps and bounds. Everybody's sitting down at the same table. We're all focused on the same documents. We're all focused on the same processes. So I commend everybody in town, department heads, finance team, Board of Selectmen, school committee, finance committee, all the people that have
a fight in this game here. I think we've done a tremendous job, and it shows, because services haven't gone down. We're still ranked as a great town to live in. We're still ranked as a great community to send your kids to school to, so it's working, and I look forward to making fiscal year 17 another success. Any other comments? Sure.
Could you just have it on your agenda this week or next time to identify who the two members are to the Finance Policies and Procedures Committee?
We can absolutely do that.
Thank you.
It's the same until you change, right?
No, it's the same until we change, yeah. Well, I don't know if anybody else wants to have a say in it.
Yeah, sure.
I'm okay with it. You okay? I'm okay. You okay? I'm okay. I know Joe's dying to get on.
Everybody's okay?
I'm okay.
Well, Chuck took the personnel board.
He did.
I'm okay.
Yeah. All right, but we'll just ask Melissa too, just to see if she wants anything. That being said, I'd look for a motion.
If I could ask this first.
Absolutely.
Based on Darrell's input, do we want to alter our pre-printed motions at all at this point?
Mission /
Required services. Actually, mission, I think it's under level staffing.
Level staffing.
Mission
level-
would be what we would really like to have as a school
Okay,
committee.
so level staffing /
Required services.
required services.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, you ready?
sure.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to request 2 department budget scenarios be prepared for fiscal year 2017, mindful of the Selectmen's adopted goals. 1, level and required services staffing. That's budget prepared with the same staffing levels or required service levels as FY 2016, inclusive increases to support only any steps in salary schedule adjustments that may be contractually due, with a 2% salary schedule adjustment projected for non-union town employees, expenses to be level funded at the FY 2016 amount. And 2, mission budget prepared with the staffing levels as the department head appointing authority feels necessary to provide sufficient services to the community.
Second.
Moving and seconding, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We look forward to our Saturday in November 1st, 14th.
Same date.
Save the date.
Vacation day.
First snow day or something, yeah.
First snow day, yeah, there you go. All right, so moving on to chapter lands. We're gonna.
Input.
Oh, thank you very much there, Mr. Bergman. So you're not coming in the beginning of the meeting now. It kind of throws a curveball at me.
We do it 7-ish.
Yeah, 7-ish. I get it, yep. All right, so public input. Is there any public input in tonight? Okay, seeing none. Member inputs, Mr. Knox? Yes, I do want to mention that coming up on the 25th, Friday, there's a golf tournament, and all the proceeds benefit the Castle in the Trees playground that's being built. They also have a meal that night. If companies or individuals want to make donations for the silent auction, they can do so by contacting Dave McManus at 508-981-3472. And if you want to play golf, you can also give them a call. So, anything else? Thank you. Mr. Ravello.
Yes. Folks driving by the Common may have noticed recent additions there of benches, park benches. Those park benches are a Legacy Committee artifact, but very specifically Linda Giannetta, who worked tirelessly to procure those, and then with the help of Jim Clyde in the Highway Department to do the footings so that we could properly secure them so they don't get blown away in the wind. I'd like to thank everybody for doing that. And you can see it's just a continuing beautification of the Common. And with the clock, the little patio, and now those benches, it's coming along very nicely.
Big green box. I gotta jump on that too, because I walk my dog down there. I sit at the Common with my dog. It's great. It's awesome. Nice job installing, and it's nice to see that small piece of beautification along with the clock coming on the Common. Really does the town well. Mr. DeCoste.
I just want to congratulate the sports teams that have gotten started. I know I've got boys that play football, and the football team won on Friday night, so the start to another successful sports season. And just wish the community to come out and support the teams.
Nice. I stayed till halftime. So it was looked good.
I know it's leave at about halftime.
I did. So I don't have anything, but again, the common area, I wanted to mention to Jim how nice it does look. So you're doing a good job down there. It's been previous years, it didn't look that well upkept, I didn't think. Along with the country gardeners doing a great job down there, so I really like it, looks nice.
Can I just mention something?
Sure.
To give Jim another call, because you probably don't get that many. They're traveling around, no, I said it the wrong way, but I mean,
You don't deserve them, it's just the people who tell you nice things.
during the summertime and the fall sports that happen now, I've been to a lot of ball fields, Little League ball fields, other fields that are in complete disarray with grass growing all over the place, difficult to use them, and our ball fields look fantastic in comparison, so the work that those guys did all over the summer it pays off, and the fields look good.
Very good.
That's Sean, the park foreman, and whoever he has working with him at that time. But it's a challenge to keep it up, and he definitely takes pride in what he does.
Nice.
Thank you to him.
And I'll second that. And Sean took over when Pat left, and that everybody was concerned that was a big, going to be a big hole, and was concerned that the fields were going to drop off. But Sean's done a great job of maintaining the fields, and whoever else happens to be with them that day.
Don't you have some interns or something for the summer too, helping out too?
We had two summer.
Nice, nice. All right, moving on. Chapterland in Littleton.
Could
Go ahead.
we,
Yes, you can, go ahead.
I know someone came here for public input, because I said, I told Alicia she could come anytime and introduce herself at a selectmen's meeting, and our new recreation director is here.
Oh, sure,
So, come on
absolutely.
and
Okay.
Say hello.
Yes, absolutely.
Hi.
Hi.
I don't know where you want me to go.
Come on up and say hello to us.
Oh, hey, how are you doing?
You never know who's going to turn up.
Hey, we're all here every Monday night.
But yeah, I just wanted to stop in and say hello, just so you could see a name to the face, or a face to the name, so to speak. And so yeah, I'm very excited. I'm the new director for Parks, Recreation, and Community Ed. And I live in town, so that's even more exciting to be able to build community on a bigger scale for a town that I live in, that I call home. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. One thing I just wanted to share, I know you guys have like a lot of things that you have to get through. Our new brochure came out, and this is the coolest thing ever. So our awesome photo at the front came from one of the girls that's actually done programming with us since she was a little kid, and she worked for us at the front desk this summer. So she started off doing photo classes through the recreation department, and actually now she's on the cover of our brochure. So
Outstanding.
it's very cool. She also did a video for us that's on our website about like all of the programming that we did this summer, so it's pretty fantastic to see that.
Well,
So
congratulations.
Thank you.
I know that's a very challenging job sometimes. I know that you're coming into a budget process. It's going to hurt a little bit, I'm sure,
Yep.
to start off with.
It won't hurt as
With
bad
your-
as Fitchburg did, I'm sure, for all
Yes.
those years you were
yes,
there.
yeah.
Alicia worked for Mayor Wong in Fitchburg, and the mayor, I see the mayor at Transit Authority meetings, and she's very sorry to see you go, but then she's not running for reelection
I know.
either. So, but it's great that we have someone who's worked as a recreation director for a number of years and who lives in our town and who will be giving back to her town. So
Sure.
Welcome, Alicia.
Yeah, and again, any challenges that you may come across or need our support, I know for me specifically, give us a call, send us an email. I'm more than happy to meet with you, talk to you. I know in my point, I'm sure the rest of the board will do the same, so
Okay,
congratulations.
lovely, thank you.
Thank you, and good luck.
Welcome on board.
Thanks
Welcome
for
on board.
coming.
No problem.
All right, Keith, now before I start this, I want to make sure, you're all set? You sure? All right. Chap?
Should we save this till the meeting first?
In the studio.
Oh, yeah.
We got our AD here.
Yeah. This was scheduled for 7:15, and with the Cooper land and the Chapter 61 properties and the K property. We're
We
gonna,
can do number 7.
yeah, we can get into number 7, the town administrator and the assistant town administrator of finance. Ratify a collective bargaining agreement with the police union.
So we reached a tentative agreement with the police at the bargaining session we had back on August 25th. The union...
Deputy?
Rank and file, Deputy Patterson. Thank you. The union rank and file ratified that later that same week, and so this is our first regular board meeting since then. And so now the matter of ratifying by the full board comes forward. It's on the same terms, basically, as the 3 contracts that have been ratified and funded before. It's a 3-year contract, 2, 2, and 2. And we're glad that we could reach, took a little longer, but it was, we're all very glad that we could reach an agreement with the police.
Yeah, I think during the process, it was good to see the patrolmen's union bring in somebody different outside of town from their e-board to listen to what was going on. So that was very interesting to me, and I think it helped both parties, so worked out well.
I think they worked together really good, and from what I hear, it was accepted very well when they went back, so
Nice.
they all seem pretty happy.
Good. Questions, board members? I'll look for a motion then.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to ratify a 3-year contract with the Littleton Police Unit, Massachusetts Coalition of Police, Local 204, for the period July 1, 2015 through June 30, 2018, with salary schedule adjustments of 2%, 2%, 2%, to further vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 150E, subsection 7B, to submit to the November 2, 2015 special town meeting a request for an appropriation necessary to fund the cost items contained therein.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thanks,
If I may-
Jeff.
If I may say something.
Absolutely.
I joke with the deputy chief when the chief on vacation, I'd be bugging him every day, only to realize that like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock on Monday morning, yeah, I was making my
That's the first
phone.
phone call I got. But that was,
He reminded me that, too.
it was handled.
Very well, too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, the community compact update.
There's no action to take on this, but we thought it'd be worth to report to the full board that on September 3rd, in an event that was held here in Littleton, Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito came and officiated at a 5-town event where community compacts were signed by Acton, Boxborough, Littleton, Maynard, and Westford. The 5 of us are embarking together on a transportation best practice, our Crosstown Connect Transportation Management Association. In addition, Littleton submitted a best practice not only for transportation, but also for economic development and public safety. And in addition to being able to work cooperatively with the state administration on Crosstown Connect, we will be getting some technical assistance funding to help Littleton with the development, economic development marketing plan and public safety strategic plans. So the details of that are yet to be finalized, but we have gone to the first step of entering into a compact agreement, and as soon as we have the further paperwork on the technical assistance funding, we'll share that with the board. There's a video. I want to thank Lctv for doing a great job in putting together a wonderful video of the event, which is available online. And we are grateful for the support that we've received from the administration. In the case of the Crosstown Connect Transportation Management Association, while the amount of money that they're able to actually commit to us at this point is not specified, there is some that we can point to. We can point to $50,000 per year for the next 3 years that the Transportation Secretary is providing to our TMA, to our Transportation Management Association, to help with its operations for the next 3 years. That's a total of $150,000 we'll get from that source. But there's also a lot more that we want. We want earlier, later, and more frequent service along the Fitchburg line, because it's all about providing for links between where people live and where they work. And we have the commitment of the administration to, and they're not ready to unveil what the specific time is, but when the new schedule comes out next month, October, for the Fitchburg line schedule, we are told with a high degree of confidence the first reverse commute of the day will be arriving in Littleton prior to 8 a.m. Right now, it arrives at about 8:35. A year ago, it arrived at 9:40, so we're definitely heading in the right direction, and we have the state's attention. The state will also be working with us and with our regional transit authorities to help us sort through a lot of the bureaucratic issues that we face in figuring out how to design a fixed shuttle route that links the employment centers with the commuter rail and other transportation hubs. And it's just great for us to be on the state's radar screen. And even if there's not specific dollar amounts that we can point to, we need, it would be great to have another $2 million to help install another 200 spaces at the Littleton commuter rail station. We'll work on that. We have a commitment to work together with the MBTA and with the administration. But the fact that they're meeting with us, that they are consulting with us about schedule changes is just worlds ahead of what we've seen before, and it's very gratifying to be part of this partnership.
I think it's a long time coming. This process started, 5 years ago now, 4 years ago, with the reverse commute and the additional track, so things are paying off. Jay?
No, the signing ceremony was a wonderful opportunity for the Lieutenant Governor to come to town, see our police station, see the hospitality of folks in town, and then with the other 4 towns also. It worked out wonderfully, and it was the ceremony commemorating everything that Keith has mentioned, and you just spoke about, too, as the beginnings 4 to 5 years or so ago. But Keith being shy and unassuming and way too bashful and modest to tell you that he did receive a personal letter from the Lieutenant Governor thanking him for setting it up.
What, you mean this?
Yes, that.
Oh, this little thing?
Now, it's a letter that you might expect, for sure, because Keith did a fabulous job in setting this up. But now the personalization of the letter. Dear Keith, thank you for hosting a great signing with the Fabulous 5. Great job. Karen Polito.
The Fabulous 5.
So,
So,
and anybody...
I shared with the other
Hold on, I'm
4
talking.
towns
Hold
that
on 1 second. And anybody who's been in Keith's office... Anybody who's been in Keith's office noticed that he has many, many signed photographs and letters from luminaries in the political field, certainly like Vice President Joe Biden, former governor of Massachusetts, Dukakis, and many other similar luminaries. But when I saw this from our Lieutenant Governor, I offered to Keith, I will even buy the frame so you can post this one in your office.
It'll be my first Republican. So.
That's why you
Although I married a Republican.
You had to notice in the picture, too, with all the towns right there, Lieutenant Governor wasn't in the middle. Keith was.
Well, she deferred to him.
Very modest.
Doesn't want to draw.
Camera angle.
Doesn't want to draw attention to anything.
Sincerely, all that tongue-in-cheek joking aside, Keith did a great job setting this up for the town, and it went off beautifully, and the Lieutenant Governor was very, very pleased, and you could see it in her words and her actions. And I want to add one more thing, if I may.
Go ahead.
Melissa spoke also on behalf of the town, and Melissa offered some very important points. She was on target with her comments, and they dovetailed very nicely with the Lieutenant Governor's talk also. So Melissa did a great job representing us in speaking today.
Great. I had a blast up in Maine. Any other comments, Mr.
Blast at work.
Unless we forget, the video is available online, and Melissa did a fine job representing
Nice.
the town of Littleton. So you can see the whole thing online. So
The computer's a wonderful thing for Keith.
very
All right.
dangerous.
Yeah, it is. Want to take a look at the minutes?
Two members of the school committee come in late.
Ready for a motion?
Yes, sir.
Move the Board of Selectmen approve minutes from meeting on Monday, August 24, 2015.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Suppose we can do 5A real quick, too, just for 7:15, the conservation fees.
Yeah, I think that they may be coming later.
Oh, they
but I'm
are?
sure, but I'm sure that they'll take yes for an answer if you want. to
Yeah, I
approve
mean,
these.
it's essentially,
Yeah, but they might want to say something, see, I'd wait.
Yeah, we could
Okay.
do, we could take number 6.
think it'll be quick?
Is there anybody that has shown some
Yeah,
interest in
we'll-
attending?
We'll take it.
I know you had received some input on that, right?
We've had one citizen input asking that whatever location we put the pad be
Discreet.
discreet and in the town's best interest. Well, sure, I mean, we all want to have it. We're here to
So, do you think...
arm wrestle you to the
we
floor.
should
but
just-
that-
Don't do that now.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So let's go on to, we'll open up number 4, Chapterland in Littleton. Mass General Law 61A, Forestry, 61A, Agricultural, Horticultural, 61B, Recreation. As you all know, we've been discussing the Cooper property and what the town's ability is in regards to that property. One of the questions that came up was how much property is there in town in 61A, 61, and 61B. And we tasked Keith with getting some statistics, so Keith, why don't you
Sure. I'll
run us through what you've got
that up
before
on
us?
the screen here, and it was frankly, it was not an analysis that we had undertaken recently, so it was helpful to see. The last time we had, well, let me say, every time that we do an open space and recreation master plan, we publish a list of all of the so-called chapter lands, chapter 61, 61A, 61B. And since we're in the process of updating that plan, it was last updated in 2009, we're updating it now in the year 2015, thought it would be useful to take a look at what trends have we seen in chapter land in Littleton, and the information here shows it by acres. We also have the number of parcels, we have the assessed value, the full value information provided by the assessors as well. But in general, what we're seeing is that there's been a decline in Chapter 61A acreage. The trend has been a decline since 2009. There's been a slight increase in Chapter 61 land, and the trend has been slightly upward for Chapter 61B. But 61A is what gets most of the attention, and we've seen about, based on current information, we've seen about 200 acres come off 61A, and we are anticipating that it's another 100 or so acres in the next year or two that are slated to come off. I thought it was important to put that information together because, as we often talk about on what strategies the town can have to preserve undeveloped land, that our ability to preserve it by acquiring it is sort of limited, that you get to expend funds on a relatively small number of properties by acquiring them because the town's borrowing ability at some point is limited. And what we have historically done, even with Chapter 90, with Chapter 61A properties, is that we've only had serious discussions about trying to acquire the most important properties. and that other properties that were not a high acquisition priority, or that the offered price was more than we were willing to spend. In those cases, over the last 5 or so years, that when the property owner has asked for a waiver of the right of first refusal, that the board has typically made a judgment after getting input from all the boards, that typically the judgment has been to waive the right. I mean, there haven't been any number of small lots, a lot here, a lot there, that's been offered, 2 lots, say, for $300,000 or something. We have in the information, and I've got this, I have this analysis available online, but just, oop, that didn't show it, didn't do what I wanted here, this one. That we have tracked those changes that have taken place specifically for particular properties. The ones that are shown in yellow here have not happened yet, but they are on the radar screen for the next year or two. But there have been a number of properties over the last 5 years or so where we've had a buildable lot here, a buildable lot there, that the owners come in, requested a waiver, since it would have cost us, $300,000 to buy the property, and it was not a high priority. We granted the waivers. What we're now seeing, though, is that the sort of properties that are coming on are ones which are of greater importance to the town. Certainly, that's been the case with the Cooper property. We have a notice as well about the K property. The K property, and I find the map and show you, but it's a portion behind the Durkee property, off of Grimes Lane, across Foster Street from the commuter rail station. However, the Durkee property is no longer in 61A. That the Durkee property, there was never a notice received of a request for a waiver of the right of first refusal. They simply took the property off the 61A rolls. They waited the year following the end of the fiscal year, the last fiscal year that the property was on, and say in the case of Durkee, June 30, 2014 was when the Durkee property went beyond the town's ability to have a right of first refusal. It had come off a year before, but there's still a 1-year waiting period afterwards. So we thought it would be useful, and that folks would be interested in seeing a comprehensive listing of all the chapter lands. We'll have this available on the town website. I want to thank the assessing department for all of the work that they did in assembling this information. But it's in considering the discussions we've had about a couple of Chapter 61A properties, thought it'd be worthwhile to see the totality of what the chapter lands currently look like in Littleton. So we put that together.
Sure. Keith, up page 53 in the package for the Grimes Lane K property, if you want it.
Okay, let me find that.
Questions, board members, comments?
Not right now.
All right.
All right.
Mr. Vella?
When we say questions, comments, we want to take these one at a time?
Sure.
Because certainly a lot. Okay, Cooper Farm, thanks for the update. That helps greatly in all the Chapter 61.
Well, I think just number 4 at this
Oh,
point.
he's sitting there. Okay, I'm sorry.
We'll
That's why I asked
we'll
that.
jump into the Cooper property after we...
All right, fair.
This is kind of an update that during this process, we
We don't request it.
got requested to look up some of the 61, 61A, and 61B property. So it's a comprehensive list, tells you the acreages, and where we've been for the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, where we came from and where we are today.
I'll just say that one of the reasons I wanted this information, this data, was so that we don't end up kind of late in the game as the perception on the Cooper property. So I think that we've got all the information in front of us now. I think it's incumbent upon us to take a look at this, to determine, Keith used the word priority, to prioritize which lands are priorities for us, how we want to proceed, and if we do in fact want to take action prior to the property owners taking action, reach out to them, express an interest. Oftentimes in sales, you don't want to show your cards. You don't want to, as a buyer, you don't want to show your cards and say I'm interested. But I think it'd be prudent for us to reach out to the property owners and express express an interest to them for the land that they hold, and let them know that it is something that we would be interested in proceeding with. To try to put ourselves in the best position of strength.
Sure.
Just one thing, Jimmy. I think it's so important that we realize, and with all the careful planning that we do, that how important our current farmers actually are. And if those farmers weren't doing current agricultural, then there'd be a much, much different story. You take a look at some of the parcels of land here that those families own. Without our farmers, we'd see a lot of that gone. So hopefully the active agricultural farmers stay.
I think Selectman Hebert said it well during a public hearing we had our last meeting. Buy local. Go to those farm stands. That's how we can sustain the property that Mr. Knox was just talking about. We got to get out. We got to buy local. We got to buy from those farmers, and that helps us all, along with the farmers themselves.
Absolutely.
Any other comments? Based on what we saw, any questions from the public? Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, along the lines of Chuck's comments, is there a prioritized list by the various conservation groups in town? And if there is, have the selectmen seen it? Do you agree with it? Do you not agree with it? It would seem to me that if we're starting to look at this issue for the town on a town-wide basis, we've got several things going. We've got the master plan coming up. What do the master plan people think of it? What do the conservation people think of it? And then what does town administration think of it? So that we, going forward, can put a plan together so it's not a fire drill every time one of these properties comes up.
I just want to comment, go ahead, Keith, on that one. The place where the town, as a matter of policy, does that every few years is the Open Space and Recreation Plan. And 2009 was the last time that plan was updated. It's the comprehensive list of all of the open space and recreation properties. It is the tool that the state looks at if we're applying for grant funding to acquire properties. It's the tool that we look at in seeing, well, which are, that's why Cooper Farm had sort of bubbled, when discussions about that property occurred, it was, well, we know that's at the top of the list of properties that the town's said it's interested in acquiring. Some of the other properties that have shown up in other waiver requests for rights of first refusal were lower down on the list. But and we're in the process right now of updating the Open Space and Recreation Plan. We have a contract with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. We've had one public forum earlier this year that focused on recreation. We're about to schedule another one in the next month or so. That will be another important opportunity, I think, for trying to reach a community consensus on what those priorities look like, and all the actors that you're talking about, all the players, provide input into that.
The Board of Selectmen, there's maybe one selectman that was here in 2009. I'm not sure whether, Jimmy, you were actually on back in 2009 or not, but you're the old man here. And what?
No point.
I gotta defer to the expert.
In terms of longevity of the selectmen,
Yeah, yeah.
short-term longevity.
Right, yeah.
But, you know, have the present Board of Selectmen reviewed the list that we have? Are the conservation groups still in agreement with it? I mean, a 6 or 7, 8-year-old list in this environment is really ancient. Should we have a policy where it's reiterated every 2 or 3 years, or at least reviewed every 2 or 3 years, so that if something looks like it's coming up, we can plan for the funding of it selfishly from our standpoint, but from the town standpoint, knowing what's going on, what's coming up, so that, like I said, you know, it's not a fire drill whenever one of these things pops, that's all.
What's the state require, for every 5 years?
The plan that we submit is good for 5 years, and we're frankly a year beyond
Yeah.
that right now.
Gotcha.
But
So we're
in the process
behind
of
even-
updating that
Even
plan.
behind what you're talking about, too.
Before,
Go ahead, yeah.
Keith, could you remind us how many people attended that forum of the open space?
The open space one, I think it was between 30 and 40 people. The room was, it was in the multi-purpose room next door, and it was full.
Thank
It was
you.
about as full as that room gets, unless it's free food from the Council on Aging.
Go ahead, Mr. Cleary.
Yeah,
I'll come back to you.
If the open space plan is being updated right now, I just counsel that maybe more so than specific properties being listed, which oftentimes can just be the reaction to people responding to rumors out there, as the town continued to identify, as that document has done in the past, the sorts of property or the areas of town that we're interested in, and criteria, say, you know, abutting existing property that, you know, that's already protected, so that you're extending it, or, you know, preserving properties along waterways or wildlife trails, or you know, whatever, or farmland, you know, in a certain area, so that, you know, twofold. One, you're establishing a criteria basis for why you're protecting it, rather than all this, you know, we've heard so-and-so's in their late 80s, so therefore this property ought to be top of the list. You know, it probably has more credibility to it, and it gives you more flexibility, too. If you're announcing to the world, you know, whose properties you're interested in, then, you know, you're already, you know, making the first statement in negotiation, too, I think.
Yeah, Don McIver, Littleton Conservation Trust. I've been in the open space plan for a number of the 5-year segments, helping out this time, even though I'm not on it now. What Paul mentions is true, that sometimes you're a little cautious about what you prefer to protect because you don't want a price war to happen. But with open space plan, the discussions are going on now, and when they get approved, all the boards approve it. You guys have approved every open space plan that has ever gone through, and it goes to the state, and the state has to approve it. So it gets a lot of review. Chapterland, while good for protecting stuff, well, it doesn't really protect it, it's just temporary on the shelf. It's a temporary holding situation. Really owning the land in fee and ownership over the conservation easement is what protects the land. As we see, things can pop out of chapter quite easily. But there are some property owners who are very much interested in having a conservation restriction, and it's no secret, and it has a great benefit in some cases because it's adjacent to other conservation lands. And I'd point out Joyce Williams in particular for 10, 15 years has been trying to protect some of her land through a conservation restriction, and it butts Newtown Hill. So it makes a lot of sense that it's contiguous and it's desirable. And that's before the CPC committee as being eligible, but we haven't gotten to the funding. A lot of other things have happened. But as Paul points out, as Joyce points out, she is in her 80s and she would like to see something happen. So there are some things with higher priority. Some is the characteristic of the land, some it is configuration, some is what it's adjacent to, and some is because it's likely to change in the near future. So I think the people in Open Space Committee would very much like to work with you, and we should all be on the same page. We've discussed different ways of prioritizing. I've gone through the open space plans of all of the nearby towns because there was the issue about how much land was protected in Littleton. And I determined, looking at it, was only 14%, much less than the other towns. But some of the other towns, what they do have sometimes all the chapter lands. They rank order it. That's rather laborious and somewhat questionable, whether you can say of 100 parcels, one is slightly better than the other. What might be useful, I've seen elsewhere, is you put in buckets. There's a high priority, middle high priority, and sort of lower priority. And to answer the question about keeping things maintained, your board had actually determined the open space committee should be open space implementation committee. It shouldn't just every 5 years go through a fire drill, as was mentioned, that actually you should try to maintain things and keep up with it and have an action plan to acquire land that is high priority. And everyone be on the same page as much as possible. So maybe down the line, there should be some meeting about open space and selectmen. And, we could discuss some of this. I mean, they're good questions you raised. I'm glad to hear you, finding it important.
Rick Finley, on the Conservation Trust. What Don just mentioned at the very end of that is that the Open Space and Implementation Committee, Recreation Committee, become an active committee continuously, as opposed to coming up every 5 years to upgrade the document. I think that, is basically what we're looking for is a committee that's dedicated to keeping an eye on the chapter lands and open space in town. That's just an existing committee that could be.
Sure. What I'd like to do is, if we could find out what the charge of that committee has been, see if we can modify it to keep it active to meet at least once a year or biannually or something to that effect.
That would be
We can definitely talk about that.
When we created it, it was intended to do just this, be ongoing. And
Yeah.
that's, I think if that's ceased to happen, then just simply
gotta look
encourage
at
them to get back at it.
Sure, just take a look at the charge, rekindle it, and focus it back. Yes, sir.
Darrell Baker, Grist Mill. One just comment relative, and I think it relates towards the budgeting aspect of the open space there, is trying to get a handle on the projected market value of the land versus our assessed value and what we think it might sell for, because I think I've been caught by surprise as a taxpayer when I see the warrants on how much the market value of the lot is when they offer to sell it to the town for right of first refusal, which is substantially higher than what we carried on the books for tax assessment. So we don't really have a good number to project how much that prioritized list is going to cost. And I think that's something we need to try to get a better handle on there.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and one of the things that we tried to do in putting together the analysis is just, for starters, show the disparity between the assessed value and the full value. And what the market value is yet another number beyond that, and you need only look at what we see as an assessed value for a lot, and then the bona fide offer is 10 times that amount. So that as we look at, if we were to have a strategy that says, well, let's just acquire these properties, you quickly see how you run out of money after the first couple of properties, so.
Back. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Susan Dunn, Crane Road. I'm very ignorant about this, but do we ever look at property other than just to keep us open space, but purpose-driven purchasing of property? If we're looking to do some subsidized housing of our own for the elderly, or if we're looking for a community center, or if we're looking for a senior center, is looking at the properties that become available ever looked at and ranked by purpose of the land?
So can we? Yes, we can.
But do we?
Have we? In my 7 or 8 years I've been here, recreation is the only discussion that's been had. So as these properties come up and there's discussion, we would hope that folks like you come to our meetings to have your voice heard, to say, hey, what about a community center? Or hey, what about some elderly housing? We hear from Gino a lot about
The site for the police station may be the last time that the town did that. And that was
Right.
Couple,
There you
that
go.
was a decade and a half ago,
Sure.
or longer. Okay.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, just two things. You know, a prime example is the senior center. I remember Marge Harvey would always get up and say, well, what about senior center, and there are other things. We do realize there are some lands towards the center of town that are changing hands, and there may be some horse trading that's necessary there, and there may be opportunities. That's something to think of, thinking what the needs are, what happens there. What I was originally going to talk about was actually the finances. People talk about finances for acquiring land. The Conservation Trust actually went out and rallied people to pass the CPA exactly for this reason. You know, with agricultural land, conservation land, there's an initial hump for purchase, but maintenance is not there. There's no cost for maintenance. The main barrier is that initial cost. And that's why we brought in the CPA, went out, got 500 signatures, and got all the boards on board and focused that this would be a good thing for the town. And, you know, some time ago, I know Paul had to put aside for open space funding of, what, $5,000 a year. Yeah, something that's helpful, but with 50, it was a small amount compared to the cost of land. And so, you know, we tried to find a responsible way to finance it. And the CPA seemed to be the best way to do that. And that's why the Conservation Trust has been behind all the changes to CPA, including the blended CPA, where you can funnel money in, you can get a better match, and you can meet that costly challenge. And with that, it's often seed money to match state and federal grants. So it does get us over that hump. And that's the biggest problem for open space land.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Gino.
Gino Farrelly from Howard Avenue. I concur with the young lady. It's about time that somebody else besides me think about the seniors. And I've been crying for 12 years, honey. Okay? So I need people like you, all right? That we need more elderly seniors to participate, because I'm only one voice, and the selectmen are trying to do whatever they can. But the question is, when we need something, they come to see the selectmen, the planning board. But we're talking about open space with conservation. I think we have enough conservation, but we have to think about the seniors, because they have no place to go, and there's so many people that have no place to go because they can't make enough money to buy it, to rent an apartment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Moving on, Cooper Farm, 180 Great Road, status and update. We got town council here tonight to give us an update. We've got permission from the trust to have an independent appraisal. Tom, go ahead, you can walk us through that process.
Sure. So we're in contact with an appraiser waiting to get a quote. We don't have that in hand yet. Hopefully that'll come in the next couple of days. So we'll get our appraisal, and from there, we're kind of in a wait-and-see approach. What we know, which is new information, I think, we've always known that they could withdraw and wait a year, and then they could sell their property to whoever they wished. What we've recently learned through conversations with DOR is that the mechanism for withdrawing from that for that year actually starts much earlier. So if you wanted to withdraw, it's fiscal year based, so you withdraw from a fiscal year. So we're in FY16. If you wanted to withdraw FY17, you would not file your forms by October 1st of this year. So it's almost a 2-year or say year and 8-month process to get it out of 61A. So that actually puts a longer time frame on it than we were thinking. When I originally reviewed this, I wasn't aware that there was this long lead time. So it's more of a kind of a 20-month thing. So other than that, that's where we are. We're going to get an appraisal, and I guess we'll see what we want to do with it.
Yeah, and I think as the town has seen us done previously to other properties that were purchased, our first step is to get an independent appraisal. Once we have the independent appraisal, now we have at least a baseline, as to what the property's worth, and then we can sit down and start some type of negotiations with the landowner. Excuse me. In regards to the Cooper Farm, we all know that it's under contract. We all know that that process to take it out of 61A has started. That came out the last meeting, the last public hearing. So what the towns has to necessitate now is get that appraisal done. Then we can at least start talking to the folks, the trust, and communicating with them to say, if you don't take it out of 61A and the deal doesn't go down with the purchaser, we want the property, and start the negotiation process. So the update really is, as town council said, we're going to start the appraisal. We're waiting for some bids. The trust has approved the appraiser,
That's correct.
and we're waiting for a quote for the appraisal to come through, and then we'll start this process. Mr. Bergman?
Yeah, we do have the seller's permission to enter onto their property and to have our independent appraiser tell us what it's valued at.
Yes, we do.
So we're happy to have that opportunity, and we're gonna pursue that. I think it's probably worth just talking about what the time frame is, and I'd have to say, when we all last met, the common understanding might have been that a year from now, that is, say, August, September of 2016, is when a party, was all that someone would have to wait, all the developer would have to wait, and not give us a valid notice, and then they could just go on with developing the property 1 year from now. The information that we have from town council via the Department of Revenue is it's longer than that. It's July of 2017, almost 2 years from now, or a year and 9 months from now, that the party would have to wait. And just reading that document, and it's a public record, that the document, the P&S agreement was signed in April of 2015 and requires a closing within 17 months, which takes you to September of 2016. Does not take you to July of 2017. So that may, and unless that agreement is extended by mutual agreement of those parties, and we don't get in the middle of that, but that if the town retains the ability to have a right of first refusal until July of 2017, then there may be a window that is afforded us at some point, and we want to be ready for that.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, so the good news is we are moving forward towards some resolution, and I think, as we move forward at these meetings, we'll continue to give the town an update also. Board members' comments?
I do actually a couple questions, if I may. The P&S that came forward to us, town council deemed that it was defective.
Correct.
It did not meet all the requirements of the statute. Had it met the requirements of the statute, what are our options?
So if you received a bona fide offer,
Yep.
you have 120 days to match it.
Okay?
And that, by match, that means deliver a check.
Okay?
So you have to do your whole process in 120 days.
Okay, we have a town meeting before that. All right, so we seem to think that our opportunity has been prejudiced by the presentation of a defective P&S.
I would say our right of first refusal has not yet been triggered because they have not submitted a bona fide offer.
So a mistake on the part of the buyer and the seller can possibly ace the town out of an opportunity to exercise first right of refusal?
No, well, so you don't have an automatic right of first refusal. If they want to sell it to someone and they want to take it out of the chapter program immediately, they have to give us a right of first refusal. They have this alternative procedure, which is, so the process to keep your land in chapter is you apply by each October to the assessors, and so your October 1st application goes for the next fiscal year. So they keep doing that, and they'll stay in the chapter. If they want to come out of the chapter, then they don't send in their application by October 1st. They're still in for this fiscal year. They're out so they're paying full taxes for the next fiscal year, and at the end of that fiscal year, they can sell it without a right of first refusal.
I fully understand all the reasons why we can't.
Okay,
I want to drive towards the reasons we can.
okay,
Since both buyer and seller are represented by the same attorney, in essence, both buyer and seller came forward with the same proposal. It was a defective P&S, whether accidental or for other purposes, so that our first right of first refusal, other than to waive it, presented its only option to us. Why do we not have the option to exercise and seek to purchase the property now?
Because we gave our notice within, we gave the notice of the defect within 30 days.
It was defective, that's all.
right.
Because
And if we had not given the notice of defect within 30 days, then the 120-day time clock would have ticked on, and it would have expired before today.
Okay, so that's an additional reason why we can't. I'd like to ask you, how can we?
How can you buy the property?
Yes.
Okay. So, we know they have a contract.
Here's what I'd offer. I'm
Okay.
putting you on the spot with that
Yep.
question right now, and I think it requires a very thorough, learned, and thoughtful answer. So rather than put you on the spot and have you publicly tap dance, that's not fair to you. If it pleases the board, I'd ask that we ask our council to come forward with ways that the town of Littleton can purchase the property, should we choose to, based on current statutes in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and not allow a defective P&S to prejudice our opportunities.
Okay.
Sure.
So-
And there are ways that
Sure.
you can do it, and they're...
I'm happy to explore those.
And they
Yeah.
include the big one, which is eminent domain.
Right, that's the
Well-
classic, yeah.
I'd certainly like to add, I'm a firm believer in contract. Without contract, we have anarchy. So diving into someone else's contract in the middle of it is not the right thing to do, period, dot. But I don't want to sit here, and because a defective P&S is presented to us, that, as I said already, prejudices our opportunities to purchase it, that I don't find copacetic. So please, anything you can do to help us there.
Okay, I will get creative.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Knox?
Keith, I have a question from a comment that was made to me today. Has the town formally ever been offered the opportunity to purchase that property to date?
To purchase, has the town been offered the purchase?
Has the family at any time come to the town and said, we're selling the property, do you want to buy it?
The property, I'm not aware that has occurred. I don't know of what conversations take place with everybody, but
No,
there's never been any document that's been submitted to this board and reviewed at this table with such an offer.
Okay. The reason I asked is that a comment came to me, third party, that the family in the past had offered the town to purchase a property.
Well, in fact, that we have our corporate memory, because I know that there have been plenty of overtures that have been made by the Selectmen's Cooper Farm Preservation Committee, and that Rick Finley as chair had a lot of conversations.
So what I would say was, they came to me not saying that it was for sale, but that they would like to sell it to the town. And that's why I came to the Selectmen and put the committee together to help us move forward in that direction. And we were moving along fine until we came to the appraisal. And the appraisal, unfortunately, was about half of what...
Yeah, the appraisal, and this was about 4 or 5 years ago, I think the appraisal came in at $700,000, and there was no interest.
It was never for sale.
And at which
But
point...
they were interested in working with us to sell.
Well, at which point, we were told the property's not for sale.
Right.
It never was for sale. I mean, but they wanted to work with us to sell it to us, but it's not formally for sale.
Okay. Thanks.
Go ahead, Don.
I'd like to point out for the appraisal, which I think maybe the Conservation Trust helped pay for, and I've read the summary, and what it says is, assuming this, assuming that, there was no information given to the appraiser to be able to calculate how many houses could be there for a yield. So the value was a depressed market, what happened, and the best they could figure was...
Which one are you talking about?
This was the
2012.
Oh,
Yeah,
the
the
old
appraisal.
one? The old?
Yeah, the old
Rick did?
appraisal.
Oh,
Right.
oh,
But
oh,
I'm saying there are two
Yeah.
reasons. One, it was a depressed market. Also, there was people weren't allowed to do soil testing the way you do for clear testing. So by formula, they really couldn't get a
What?
higher yield.
I think,
And the market was depressed, I'll back up now.
So there's two reasons. There was no testing the soil, no perk test, nothing else of that nature. So if you read the summary, it says assuming this, assuming that, assuming assessor records are correct, and it's not surprising it came in low given that condition.
Right. Any other comments?
I got a kind of a shiny object comment.
Go ahead.
The,
Pick that quarter up.
what's that?
I'll pick the quarter up.
That's, given the deeper understanding of the chapter language and it being the fiscal year, not calendar from the date that they determine that they're going to remove from chapter, does that change anything relative to Durkee?
No.
No, they did it.
Because Durkee's last year on the 61A rolls was fiscal 2013, so its year ended at the end of 2014, June 30, 2014. But I have to say that what happened with Durkee, though, points to one of the things that it will be well for us to change in our procedures. Right now, the only notice that we get, that this board gets or any other board gets, is when someone requests a change, when they're giving us a notice and requesting a waiver. Well, what we don't see, it is seen by the assessors, but we don't see it. We will see it in the future, though, is when a property comes off of chapter. And
They don't file that paperwork.
that information, it gets filed down there, and that
Correct.
information will get shared with the world, so.
So
All right.
it's a procedure change.
Any other comments? All right, thank you very much. That's the update on Cooper Farm. As we move forward, we will update the public also. All right, so another piece of property coming up for 61A notice is the K property on Grimes Lane. When did we receive the notice at Town Council?
On August 31st.
August 31st.
Town Council reviewed it and finds that it is a valid notice, so therefore the 120 days, the clock is ticking, and will expire on December 29, 2015. So if the bona fide offer, the price for 43 acres of the K property is $850,000. And we've invited comments. We're just at the early point in the review process of inviting comments from town boards and departments for their recommendations. But given the interest in chapter property, we want to actually put it on tonight's agenda. I have to say, we barely have a request for a right of first refusal. I did read closely that the attorney who sent it to us tells us that the 120 days, that we have a bona fide offer period of 120 days, and that please address any follow-up communication, including but not limited to a notice of non-exercise, back to the attorney. So.
Board members, questions?
Schedule a public hearing?
Yep. Go ahead, I'll just take a couple comments here.
Yeah, I tried to figure out exactly what land you're talking about. The K's on 7 parcels.
Yeah.
2 of them are listed on Grimes Lane, and each of them are less than an acre.
Yeah.
There's one that does touch Grimes Lane, but listed in Foster Street, and that's 45 acres. So it was a little bit ambiguous, and it would be helpful when you state something.
Yeah, I can
It is
put it up on the
listed
screen.
No, I know what it looks like, but yeah, it's
I
helpful to look
can
at.
point to which lots.
Well, I'm just saying, the assessor records have only 2 of those lots in Grimes Lane, each less than an acre, and the big one, which I assume this must be, is actually listed on Foster Street. So it's sort of ambiguous, it's hard to tell what we're talking about until right now. I mean, it's, and I'm not pushing for protecting, I'm just saying it's hard telling what's going on. And I did spend some time with GIS, assessors maps, and I have the information from it.
Yeah,
It's just,
let me get it.
just looking for the future, if nothing else, it'd be worthwhile putting down the parcel in particular. Because in this case, there are 3 parcels that touch Grimes Lane that happen to be owned by the K's. And As far as the worth of it, I mean, it's an odd configuration. Durkee's already out of chapter, so yeah, I don't see the value of protecting that odd configuration. But it's hard telling what we're talking about unless we really know the parcels.
Yep.
And this is in fact the same developer that
Turkey is, yeah, they bought the
Turkey's in
Turkey.
agreement with.
Yeah, I wish the whole thing went differently, but so be it.
Yeah, this is the property that is shown in the plans that are attached to the notice that we received, and what I did was call up that on our town GIS system. So here's Foster Street, here's Grimes Lane, here's the commuter rail station. There's no frontage on Foster Street of this property. It has this much frontage on Grimes Lane, and that's it. The rest of it is sort of...
And where the easement on Lane, there are actually 2 1-acre parcels that would bring it down to Grimes Lane. Those are the 2 that are listed on Grimes.
And the adjoining property, the Durkee property, is this adjoining property that is outside of the 61A protection.
But I'm saying in between Durkee and where that E is on Lane, there are 2 parcels, 1-acre parcels that are acting in a chapter, and they're going by the K, and those are the ones that are listed in Grimes Lane. I'm just saying it's confusing, you know, confusing for everyone.
This is the map of what has been, of what is the subject of the proposed
Yeah,
sale.
but from the agenda, you can't tell. I guess that's one thing.
Well, it's good you found it, so thank you. Because I was able to find it driving over there, too.
I'm sorry.
It's good you found it. Happy for that, because I found it, too, driving over there, so, but thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, in the future, it's nice to list the parcels, because it's explicit, we know exactly what we're talking about, because we only know that even the sizes aren't listed.
Any other questions from the board?
No, sir.
All right, so
schedule a hearing.
let's schedule a public hearing, Keith, at our next meeting.
Okay, we can do that on October 6th. The
And
next
when-
meeting is next Monday night.
Right.
So we're going to advertise, we could do it, October 5th, I'm sorry.
So when's the 120 up?
December.
29 December.
But if you were to exercise it, that requires a town meeting.
Right.
So just to be
November
mindful.
2nd, right.
Be
So
mindful of that.
even if we put a placeholder on at this point,
Well, you could,
next week.
well, what you would have time, you'd even have time on the 6th. Let's say on the 6th of October, you decide that we should buy this. You would have enough, you'd have enough time.
When did the
Even-
warrant close?
Well, the warrant closes this Friday, however, there's enough time legally, it's only 14 days' notice to call a special town
Right.
meeting if need be.
Okay.
So if on October 6th you say, gee, we gotta buy this, you can bring that matter to the November 2nd.
Gotcha.
town meeting by calling
So,
another town meeting for the
October
same
the
night.
5th it is.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
Parcels are 13-0.
We'll have the parcel numbers on the public hearing notice. All right, number 5, special town meeting, insert articles for Monday, November 2nd, meeting with boards. Bonnie, you want to jump in? You got some here? We already inserted.
For 7:30.
Council, type council establishment, the exclusion, supplemental capital items.
There's no deadline.
All right, so,
So we're going through the special town meeting.
special town meeting, we'll start with the fund debt exclusion stabilization fund.
Yeah, I put these in order on the agenda just to try to, since FinCom was still here, we grabbed the financial articles first to
Sure.
see if there's interest. And there is, the first 2 items on your posted agenda, establish and fund a debt exclusion stabilization fund and supplemental oh, I'm sorry, not the second one, but there's a further one down. FY 2016 appropriations into the blended CPA fund, the first and the third that are listed here. I've had some subsequent discussions with Bonnie, who I know has briefed the chair and vice chair of the Finance Committee. If we are, we have time at the May special town meeting to deal with the issue of a debt exclusion stabilization fund. We need not deal with that at the November one, especially where I think the preference might be to have the topic discussed first with the Financial Policies Working Group. It's the establishment of a debt exclusion stabilization fund is nominally in the policies that were adopted last year, but we haven't fleshed it out to see, well, what would that look like, how much money, what percentage, figures you might put into it. And so that one, I would say, and I've discussed it with Bonnie, could wait for the Springtown meeting after more of a considered discussion with the Finance Committee about it. The second, the other one that I mentioned, additional appropriations into the blended CPA fund, that is also something that we don't have a November deadline for dealing with that. We have a deadline of June 30, at the end of the fiscal year, to deal with it. And if we wanted to put a placeholder to see whether there are funds from, whether from the various mitigation funds or cell tower funds or other things that we want to put in the fall, we could do it, but it's not time sensitive. That we could also take up that matter in the spring.
Yeah,
And
I
think
mean, do we have any money at this point to even put in?
We'll have more in the spring.
Yeah, we'll have more in the spring, certainly. That
So
we'll
I'll
have
take,
more from the housing
I'll
funds.
trade your two for one.
Yeah.
Take those two off,
Yeah.
and I'd like to add at least a placeholder for the orchard lease. And that needs town meeting approval.
Yeah.
We're gonna work to get that out.
Okay, so we need not do the debt exclusion stabilization fund or the blended CPA fund. We'll add the NAGOG bill, orchard lease, authorizing vote at town meeting. And I know Bonnie's been working on that. We can pull something together.
All right, so any other financial ones? I don't see any that, the revolving fund?
The supplemental capital items from available funds, which actually Bonnie talked about, two of them during her presentation, the funds for, additional funds for the fuel facility replacement project and for the Council on Aging kitchen. The third project that we're proposing is by using so-called PEG access funds, public education government funds that we get from our cable franchisees, and for that we're proposing $59,000 in equipment that LCTV would use to essentially activate the education channel.
Tell us about that, Mark.
Am I on?
Please.
You're on.
Is this thing on?
We don't know. You tell us.
Not yet, not till after town meeting. Yes, the educational channel. Well, back in the spring, the superintendent of schools came to me and asked me if I was interested in teaching the television class again at the high school. And I told him that I was interested, but we had taken apart all the equipment from the studio at the high school, and they've since made it into something else useful over there. And I said the only way it would work is if we could have the class here. And he said, well, let's talk about that. So through a series of discussions, it finally came to fruition where through an agreement with the Park and Rec, the school uses the Park and Rec van through the school season. And the kids come over during lunchtime and E-Mod, which gives them a full hour in the studio. They eat lunch there. And the goal of the class, we have 17 kids in the class right now, and the goal is to produce a weekly news show about the school district, all levels, K through 12. And so we're pretty excited. We're just kind of getting going here with the beginning of the school year, but it's exciting. And one of the things that, in order to accomplish this, we feel it's best to get the educational channel up and running so that we'll have a vehicle to air the news each week, as well as, if you build it, they will come, to quote a movie. But we're hoping that by turning on the educational channel, it'll encourage other schools and teachers and things to produce programming to go on the channel. We'll also probably throw the school committee on there as well, because it is educational based. And
Do they get any credits for it?
they are. It's accredited class.
Nice.
I guess one of the things that made it work was that because I taught the class before, I got my preliminary teaching certificate, and it was good for 5 years, but because I'm only a .2 teacher, it stretches out time, so it's good for about 15 or 16 years.
It's prorated.
Hopefully I'll retire before the license does.
Color television right now?
It's in radio and television communications. That's the license.
LCTV Advisory Board is on board?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We've wanted to get that educational channel up and running anyway. And this gives us the opportunity to push to do that. And buying this equipment, we have to have it, put the third channel on. But one thing it's going to do is this piece of equipment can handle all 3 channels. Right now, we have a server for each one of the 2 channels. We don't buy this, we got to buy another server anyway. And then you got 3 you got to maintain. And so this will save us money, time, and the workflow will be much more efficient. We're 100% behind it. We have the money in our revolving fund, so there's no appropriated funds involved. And we'd like to get the thing up and going.
Sure.
And we're happy that Mark is able to do what he's doing with the kids. Every time we can get somebody else involved in television here in town, we're glad to do it.
Absolutely. Board members, questions?
Excellent.
Just a quick comment.
Go ahead.
I'll just say that I know that when Mark used to do the meetings,
Kids loved it.
the school committee meetings, the kids loved going to the studio. Mark would get pizzas for the kids would come, they'd volunteer, they'd record our exciting school committee meetings. And families were disappointed when that class went away. And I'm glad we're past that. I'm glad we're moving forward. I know Ryan Vallen's probably up in the booth. He's one of the kids that's kind of taken it upon himself to learn as much as he can, and he's probably in your studio quite often, and he does all the high school football broadcasts, and a lot of he does the hockey games. He did some field hockey games, girls lacrosse games last year. So kids are looking for this. Not everybody is a bookworm and at the library, and not everybody learns the same way. And the fact that this resource is available. I mean, shop and all that kind of stuff went away a long time ago, and there were kids that really thrived on those hands-on skills. And this is just another 21st century skill that kids are going to be able to learn and set themselves up for more success in the future. So thank you very much for pursuing it, and thank you to Superintendent Clenchey if he does watch our meetings.
A couple other things just to note. We have 6 special needs kids in the class, which I think is fantastic. They come over with an aide, but it's nice that they're able to get involved, and they show a real interest, and a love for it already, and it's exciting to see that be able to happen. Also, the new server that Alan alluded to, which will run all 3 channels. One new feature of that, which we currently don't have, is streaming. So we'll be able to stream all 3 channels on the internet. something we don't do now. We do on-demand, which is, usually a day or two delay of our programming, but this is another chance for people around the world to tune in live to our programming on the internet. And the other thing that's kind of cool about this is, we talked about...
Sorry, you're on vacation.
Well, we talked about...
Doesn't go to Maine.
Participation for meetings, via the internet, and really the technology wasn't there to do it in town. That might be an option for boards to consider now that the technology is there, that remote participation. So...
We had that discussion once before,
The other thing about this server is it's HD ready, so if Comcast or Verizon ever decides to give us an HD channel, which they have done in other communities, Westford is getting one, it's possible our programming will be in HD, the Selectmen's meeting in HD, I imagine.
No,
that.
please
The clarity is...
Please don't, please.
Awesome.
You can't put a
You
cheese
can't
cloth
put-
over the lens.
Like Star Trek?
Does it come with filters? That's all I
Smell-o-vision.
That's right. Oh, boy.
Sorry.
Anything else, Mark?
No, I think it's all kind of laid out for you. You probably have seen it in the packets. But, we're excited, very excited. I was talking to somebody the other day in Maynard who runs the station over there and about their government access, and he says, oh yeah, we're busy. We cover the Selectmen meetings every week, and that was it, I said, oh, well, that's great. You're really busy. We cover 8 meetings right now currently, and he's like, 8 meetings? I said, yeah. I said, wow, who does that? And I said, well, we manage it in our 2-man department here, but one of the things is contractors that we pay to cover a lot of these meetings, and we couldn't do it just with the 2 staff members we have. But so one of the biggest ticket items, I guess, is an increase in our technical services, and that's where we pay our contractors. And if anyone's interested, we pay $50 per meeting to cover, and we're always looking for contractors to cover the meetings. It's a nice way to get involved with the community. You learn a little bit about television, but also about the boards and committees that you cover, and you make some money to do it as well.
Another plug.
Shameless plug.
End of the ad.
It's all good.
Do you approve that message?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see, the personnel bylaw amendments, I believe, is next.
Yep, and we have the chair of the Personnel Board in the audience and 2 members at the table.
At the annual town meeting in May, the town approved amending their bylaw salary schedules by 2%, which was the same that was done for the union membership in town. And what we amended was the Schedule A, permanent full-time and part-time members, along with Schedule C, which was park and rec folks for seasonal temps, and Schedule C1, which was community education, seasonal temp people. But recently, the fire chief came in and talked to us about the need to upgrade Schedule D, which is the on-call fire department, in order to continue his recruiting. And we were falling back in terms of what we were paying versus towns we compete with for recruiting. Then we realized that we probably should have taken a look at all the other schedules and also updated them with a 2%, because they are town employees. We do rely on them. And so we're looking to add the 2% to not only the fire on call, which is D, Schedule B, which is right now just the meeting clerks and the election wardens, B1, which covers the COA van drivers and their dispatchers, and B2, which covers the highway seasonal folks. And we'd like to do that and make it retroactive back to July 1. And we propose that in succeeding years, when we do amend the salary schedules, that we will amend them all at the same time.
Makes sense.
It was an oversight, we should not have missed that, but we hadn't done it like that before, and it came to our attention, it was the right thing to do.
Sure. My only question is the dispatch. Are we, with Crosstown Connect, is that impacted?
We don't have any dispatch.
Okay,
That's
All right,
just
that's-
if we had a dispatcher, they would be under that category.
Gotcha.
The contract.
yep, thank you. That's the only question I really had. Board members, questions?
No, not tonight. no.
Okay. Joe? All right, thank you, Alan. Aid to Elderly and Disabled Taxation Fund. Pamela? I'm sorry, Fred, go ahead.
Quickie, what's the impact of this? Probably not a lot, but what is it and how are we paying for it?
It's
4748.
4748.
Yeah, $4,748.
$4,748.
And how are we paying for it?
It's through the raise and appropriate. We had reserved the 2% in the beginning of the budget process last
So
year.
you
that's
you
still-
reserved it across the board?
Correct.
Okay.
After it was approved.
Thank you.
You got it. Good question. Pamela?
So, last year when we talked with you, Pamela Campbell, Elder and Human Services Director, when we talked with you, you had your goal to improve senior services and also to try to provide tax relief. We made some efforts last year. This is another attempt to bring forward some tax relief aimed specifically at elders, and this also includes the disabled. So TREAD, T-R-E-A-D, stands, you'll like this, PJ, stands for tax relief for elders and the disabled. It is a state statute, Chapter 60, Section 3, D, I believe. And it allows you to set up a board to review the applications for seniors who are low income and for the disabled who also qualify. I've talked with directors in other towns, looked at how they're running the program. They have an application process. The statute calls out the reviewing board, which would be composed of the chair of the Board of Assessors, the town treasurer, and 3 seats to be named by the Board of Selectmen. And the idea would be that we would receive applications, take them to this board for approval, and the funding would come through voluntary donations by town residents. And Steve Venuti and I have been talking about some of the ways in which to advertise that and try to get the maximum exposure and allow people to provide some funding that would be for low-income elderly and the disabled property tax relief.
Okay. Board members, questions?
No, I guess the only thing is, at some point, we'd advertise for the 3 members' positions
Sure.
in the town, and maybe ask to get that process going with Pam, so we can get it advertised.
Well, after town meeting.
After town meeting,
Accepts
right.
the statute. Okay.
I'm just going to, quick comment.
Sure.
In your discussions with Steve, Pamela, I know that when you fill out your taxes, you can check off a box to donate, that kind of thing. So is that kind of the road that you're looking at, advertising, getting it out there, but letting people know when they submit their excise tax bill or their real estate tax bill, that there's an opportunity for them to check off the box and make a donation towards.
He's making arrangements for the online system to provide the check off. We're talking about putting it on the actual tax bill, telling them you can cut a check for this. We've talked about going to Light Water to ask them to do an insert.
Insert, sure.
We would obviously advertise in the usual fashion, our broadcaster, Action Unlimited.
LCTV.
Independent, LCTV, right. Yeah. And if this passes the town meeting, we want to have everything in place so we can immediately jump in and get some relief this year. The other towns I've talked to about it, I didn't find anyone who started the program and dropped it. They all kept up with the program.
It was sustainable.
Community outreach, I mean, that's the name of the game there, that's for
And
sure.
the fiscal impact for FinCom is nothing.
Yeah.
Zero. Favorite number.
I'll say that, in having a number of kids in the school system, and fundraisers are a part of it, and whenever our kids come home with wrapping paper or Yankee candles and all that kind of stuff. A couple of years ago, Rich Faherty came up with this brilliant idea of literally just sending a note home saying, we're not selling you anything. If you want to cut a check, write it out to us. And it was probably the most successful fundraiser that was ever done. So people often are willing to do it if they're asked. So I think that it's a great opportunity for us to take care of those that need some help.
And when you get the report next week from Dr. Mutchler about the needs assessment, one of the figures in that report that you were given, I know the report was really big, is that somewhere north of 30% of people in town over 65 are getting by with an income of less than $25,000. And many of those are one person in the home.
And there's another COA.
Yep, we have one more. We have, I'm sorry, what'd you say, Keith?
Another Council on Aging request.
Right. To reduce the Council on Aging membership from 11 to 9.
I can speak to that. Marge Payne,
Yes?
current chair of the Council on Aging. And just to put this in perspective, approximately 3 years ago, the Council on Aging took on the task of looking at their mission, so to speak, their duties and their obligations, and to bring things up to best practices as established by the Mass Department of Elder Affairs. And in that effort, all right, the board transitioned from a supervisory type of mode to an advisory mode. This board size is a part of that whole effort to bring ourselves and align ourselves with best practices. The Department of Elder Affairs strongly urges councils to have a membership of 7 to 9 people, no more than that, in order to work effectively. So the board did vote unanimously in August at our meeting to reduce the size of the board from 11 to 9 to bring us in line with established best practices in the state.
You have the current vacancies too? You have the...
Yeah.
We do.
They're currently, I think you're down to eight members now. There was one at, and you will soon be...
Well, we had 2 that did not ask to return to the board.
Right. You've had 2 vacancies, so
Correct.
they've been at 9 recently. You've had
Now we
one
had-
resignation that's coming this week, and another one
And
shortly.
we have it, yes, and we do. We have a member who is moving out of the town,
Okay.
unfortunately, the end of September. And so, yes.
Okay.
It's true. But the board had taken this on prior to our knowing that we were
Sure.
having a member resign.
Sure,
And that
just-
when we knew that one board, Louise Curley, was in the process of looking to sell her home and everything. Well, it has transpired, and she attended her last meeting today, actually.
Okay. Well, we wish her well.
We do. We will miss her.
Board members, questions? All right, thank you very much.
There are actually 2 articles dealing with Lctv that we should talk about. Both of them have been recommended by the Lctv Advisory Board. First one is to have the town accept the new relatively new state statute that would allow us to formally establish a PEG access and cable-related fund. I said earlier that PEG means Public Education and Government. It's where the franchise fees would go from our cable operators. The Department of, well, let me say that the long practice of Littleton and many other communities has been to segregate those PEG funds in a separate account, keep a separate balance, and then use them only for cable operations. And the Department of Revenue has ruled that's fine, but if you want to keep on doing that, you need to formally adopt this new state statute that says you can do that. And if you don't take that action, then whatever your balance is would get turned over to general fund. So it would represent a change in our behavior, a change in the way we've done our accounting. The PEG funds, we built up a balance long before we went into the LCTV business as a town department. Our the old cable advisory committee was just making sure that we were setting aside funds so that we'd have a healthy balance when we went into the business to be able to invest in the studio, make needed improvements, staff it appropriately, and so forth. If we want to continue to be able to earmark those PEG access funds for LCTV purposes, we need to vote to accept the state statute that allows us to continue that practice. So it's the request of the LCTV Advisory Committee, it's the strong request of the LCTV Advisory Committee that we do that, and since to do anything else would represent a change in policy, the administration is happy to recommend that as well. So that's one, and that's part of it. The other thing that the committee is asking is to formally establish a revolving fund for LCTV, into which we would put the proceeds of that intermunicipal agreement with Boxborough, which this board approved earlier in the year, where Littleton is providing cable services to Boxborough for which they're paying us. And it's been our desire to make sure that those funds that come in from Boxborough are then going back to the department that's providing the services. LCTV staff provides the services. They're doing a great job. You can watch Selectmen's meetings in Boxborough or Littleton if you're on demand. But it would take a town meeting vote to establish the revolving fund,
Gotcha.
so we're happy to recommend that.
You guys are all set? Okay.
All right, so kind of jumped over those, I apologize for that. We hit
Conservation? Look, conservation's here.
Right here.
Yeah, great. We have a request, we have a twofold request in the Conservation Commission dealing with community gardens. And the first part is well, number one, the community gardens are located on Conservation Commission property. The Conservation Commission has recently established a fee structure where it's not very steep. It's I'm sorry, not $1, it's $10 per plot for community gardens, but they do desire that the funds that are collected could then be segregated out into a special fund that you could then use to upkeep the property.
It's mainly to pay the water bill, because we have 18 people using the two gardens.
See all the hoops you're making us jump through.
Yeah, and last year, the water bill was maybe like $100, so we're hoping to pay the water bill and then put a little away to improve the gardens.
For a rainy day.
For a rainy day.
You won't be using water.
So it's actually, it's a two-step process. There's the creation of the revolving fund in order to have the money go back to conservation. And the other part is that since the Conservation Commission is an appointed board that's appointed by an elected board, any fees that the appointed board adopts are subject to approval by the appointed board. So you would technically need to approve those community garden fees of $10 per plot, since you, as the elected board, appoint conservation. So we have that motion prepared for you as well.
And the Stormwater Management Bylaw.
Right. And then, the big issue that we will be learning a lot about in the next year is the issue of stormwater management. And I would actually divide the issue up into two separate parts. One is the old EPA permit, which reaches back to 2003, I think. And the second issue is the new EPA permit that is expected next year, and which we will not be alone as being very unhappy with what that EPA permit may mean. But we've as far as prospectively, what we're looking at is this board is convening a joint meeting. We've now scheduled it for the 21st, a week from tonight. We're going to have a DEP stormwater coordinator, Fred Sivian, come here and meet with as many interested boards as would like to come and walk us through some of the things that seem to be on the horizon for stormwater.
But placing this on the, as a warrant article, just where we're in prep.
This is a placeholder, and we can have the longer discussion. I knew tonight would be a busy night. We can have the longer discussion next week. I'd like to have a placeholder on the warrant for November, so that as we talk further, we can decide.
When does the regulation actually take effect, or has it already been passed?
Well, it's twofold. The bylaw that we would be seeking
Yep.
to adopt will be reaching back to make sure we're in compliance with the 2003 permit.
Okay.
And will not represent anything new. It will represent old.
One of the things you're going to see in the 2016 permit, which is due out kind of anywhere between March and August, is confirmation that you are in compliance with the 2003 permit. So we need to do this to come into compliance with the 2003 permit.
Gotcha.
Littleton did some great work that is very proud of. When I got here in 2007, I was sat down and was told all about the low-impact development, LID, best practices that have been developed for stormwater, that the lead dog on that was light and water. There was something that Savas had done an awful lot of work on. And those best practices in that 2007 document are often cited in decisions that the planning board and other boards make. However, it really does need to be, whatever's in place needs to be in the form of a bylaw, which had not been brought to town meeting. So I'm talking with town council, what do we need to do to make sure we don't have an X, that we want a check mark, not an X, next to our name when EPA is looking at what did we do to comply with the old permit. So it's in that category that we'll need to bring a bylaw to town meeting. The issue, though, and one of the important issues is if we do have a bylaw, which is the appropriate board in this town to regulate it, to be in charge? I've had one initial conversation with the chair of the planning board, where at least he and I came to the conclusion that the way we're organized here, planning board is where most of the activity takes place now that manages the drainage issues, might be the place that we want to have this bylaw focused on. But different towns do different things. Concord has its water, its Public Works Commission do it. Other towns have their boards of health. I would not favor spending a lot of, while the Board of Selectmen can be authorized to do it, I would not recommend that we suddenly spend a lot of time on Monday nights dealing with stormwater.
Water and planning board sound good to me.
So it's best to invite those folks in the room, begin to have the conversation about how are we going to make sure that we're in compliance with the existing permit, and to begin to look together at what, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that would need to be raised from somewhere, and many communities are raising it from new user fees. Especially those communities that don't have excess levy capacity, which few do, we don't. So what the new responsibilities of cities and towns are going to be under the forthcoming EPA permit, we need to become familiar with that and start educating ourselves in the public. So that's
good.
So, and I think the way previews, I think the way you're going to hear about this, many towns are treating it like a utility, and that might be the way Littleton wants to treat it too. It's, everyone has stormwater, everyone has to handle their stormwater, everyone's got to pay a little bit to make sure they're handling their stormwater properly and in compliance with the permit, and that's the way we fund what we need to do.
It's going to be a good meeting. So stay tuned and get involved.
So you'll be able to tell us how a regulatory agency interpreted legislation and impacted us.
Yes. How a federal agency came
Federal.
along.
Got it.
All right, so...
We have lots of company, though. The mayors are very upset about it as a group, and
I can understand why. So that's the list of articles we have before us. I'll look for a motion. Any other comments from the board?
Not yet. All right, so we're ditching establishing fund, and FY 2016 appropriations and adding Orchard.
You got it.
All right. Move the Board of Selectmen vote to insert the following articles into the warrant for the November 2, 2015 special town meeting, subject to approval as to form by town council. Supplemental FY 2016 capital items from available funds. Establish LCTV, PEG, access, and cable-related fund. Establish LCTV, Boxborough, IMA revolving fund. Personal bylaw amendments, aid to elderly and disabled taxation fund. Reduce council on aging membership from 11 to 9. Stormwater Management bylaw, community gardens revolving fund, and NAGOG orchard lease.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
You can go home and make that opinion about Cooper Farm.
So before conservation leaves, we have one more, the community garden, Mass General Law, Chapter 41, approved fees for the community gardens. So, Andrew, I know you spoke on this earlier.
Yep.
Looks like $10 a lot. You got 19 lots, 190, and Conservation Commission was all set with it. Board members, any discussion? Look for a motion.
You good with 10? Before you go for the motion? $10 is going to cover it? That's
Oh, yeah, that'll more than cover it.
Unless Scott raises the rates next year.
Yeah.
An extra 95 there.
Here, it can already go up to.
All the stormwater out of your garden.
well, the cistern.
Look for a motion.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 22F, to approve community garden fees adopted by the Conservation Commission on August 24, 2015.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Many thanks.
All right, so Littleton Light, install a pad-mounted switch, requested by Scott Edwards, our general manager. Come on up, Scott, give us a hoedown as to what you...
I have some copies here.
I'm going to put it up on the big screen, too.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Anybody else need one?
Nope.
You good? Okay. So, back in, let me just give you a real quick history. 1983, we had poles through the common with a main line that fed through there. In 83, they buried it underground. So basically, it comes from the mill up through the mobile station into the North Common. And we have a manhole in the North Common. It's actually kind of close to where the, I think the clock maybe is right here now. But there's a manhole right there. Has an underground manhole switch in it. And so the main feed feeds down Great Road toward Donlands. And then we have a lateral feed that feeds this way towards CBS and IBM building, which was the digital building. So when that went in, we've known for a few years that the cable's getting older, and we haven't operated this switch in quite a long time. The manhole's filled with water all the time, and we opened the switch up a month ago to do some work. There's a feed right now that feeds out of there that actually feeds the a transformer over here that feeds the street lights, the traffic lights. And we opened the manhole up and pumped the water down and looked down in it and closed the manhole. It's in pretty tough shape, and I think it's a combination of water, but also road salt is because it's right next to the street, and the cables are deteriorated, the connections to the switch are deteriorated. It's kind of to the point where it looks like it's gonna fault. The problem is, if we have a fault there, once we have a fault there, the manholes, everything inside the manhole is going to be gone. Which means that the cable coming in, the cable going out, and the cable down to IBM are going to be damaged beyond repair. We stock some of that cable, but we don't stock a lot of it because it's large cable. It's very expensive. It's about $50 a foot. So we don't stock a lot of it. If that were to happen, we can backfeed Great Road, and
and we can feed up to the mobile station, but IBM, that's a lateral down that way, so CVS and IBM probably be down 2 or 3 days. So it would be kind of a real major problem. So we've kind of had this in the back of our mind that we've got to replace that switch. We don't put switches in manholes anymore. It just doesn't work in our environment. So we've got a couple of options. So if you want to step through that. We can put a switch right next to the manhole. All right, so we would basically break into the conduit and put the switch right there. So it's an above ground switch. It's a green box. It's 6 by 6 by 6 feet tall. We have them, we have them all over town. That's what they look like right there.
It only comes in green.
Green.
Get the art department at the high school to come down and paint it.
Yeah. So that's our option, their first option. Our second option, this is the pole at the end of the common here where we rise up and go overhead. And
Cross some atoms.
what's happened recently, and this has just been within the last 2 months, is a company called Light Tower has decided to put fiber cable in to feed IBM, and they're digging up Meeting House Road and putting ductwork in to feed basically down Great Road to IBM. They contacted us and we said, geez, could you put in conduit for us? Because that would be great to get, conduit outside of the common that would feed down toward IBM. So what it also allows us to do is utilize the existing conduit in the common. We could put the switch down here by the pole, and we could now feed out of that switch, feed down toward IBM, and feed this way. So all that would be new. Basically, the manhole, we would just feed straight through it. So this would be a switch by the pole, and then another option would be a switch along the roadway down here on Meeting House. So that's really our other option. The only other options other than using the common would be to use private land, and we just haven't really been able to come up with a good area that it doesn't have a sidewalk that somebody would want that in their front yard. It is something that we that you can landscape around, and I don't know, who is in charge of the common, whether it's the garden club or whoever. We can give them a sum of money to landscape around it so that you wouldn't, you could hide it. We need access to 2 sides of it.
You could put it inside the cake.
Yes. We can make it look like a big cake.
Yeah, like a log cabin.
300th cake?
But, so that's basically, what we're looking for.
No other place, no other areas down?
Six Meeting House?
What's that?
6 Meeting House?
Which is where?
Between the Common and
Here, right here?
CVS?
Yeah, well, the thing is,
there's a lot of overgrowth there and
if we put it on
private land.
private land, now we've got to obtain an easement and pay for an easement. The other thing is, we don't have other than this conduit, we don't have our main conduit there. So we'd have to dig through the common to get there, or dig up the road to get there, which is,
They're going to be doing that in October next year, when are they doing 110?
It's supposed to be October this year.
yeah, so it's,
I don't know. So, board members, questions?
I got one on, talking about, you don't want to go on private property, but on the corner of Meeting House and King, property that actually Paul Tannen owns, down the completely opposite side.
yeah.
A great road, rather, not King Street.
Oh,
Right in that area. Have you bothered talking to Mr. Tannen whether he'd want to sell a small portion of land right there?
Are you talking right here?
Yep.
No, we haven't. We have not.
My only concern is that a lot of people have worked hard and have spent money, and the idea is to take the common, which is our focal point. You know, people talk about other parts of town, but the garden club, the legacy committee have worked hard to make sure, bring it up, like, one of your proposals that you have there would actually block the clock that was just put there. So if you were coming down Great Road toward the common, your 6x6 thing would be in the way of the park they just built. Not this one here.
Yeah, well, I think it's the way I think it's actually a little bit further down this way. And there's a tree here and a tree here. We put it in between the two trees, so I don't think it would block.
I'm talking, not that proposal, I'm talking about one of the other proposals.
Yes, out by the pole, yes.
Out by the pole blocks the...
Absolutely. That's kind of why we kind of moved over to this area. It kind of gets it away from, from that. And like I said, we can screen it completely, from the road with shrubs, with fencing, whatever we would need to do.
Scott, what's the life expectancy of the switch you propose to put in?
The above-ground switches they guarantee them for 40 years. Same with the cable.
Okay, so we're at 32 years with the current one underground. And perhaps had it been better protected and maybe more often maintained, we wouldn't be in the situation we find ourselves today?
We're living on borrowed time, I will say. We've had those switches back in the 70s and 80s when a lot of this industrial cable was put underground. We've had 3 of those switches fail in the system that we've replaced. They were all kind of in that 70s and 80s, that digital era, where we were putting underground into buildings and putting these switches.
I understand what you're saying, but had we a more aggressive preventive maintenance program, might that not have happened?
Well, the problem is some of the manholes in town are dry. This is a wet manhole. So anything in the street, it just fills, we pump it down, we come back the next day, it's full, right? And it's right next to a main road with all the salt and everything, so that we really don't know any way to, maintain that. And there really isn't, from the manufacturers, there's really no, there's really no maintenance that you can do.
Okay. Or to Joe's suggestion, on the opposite side of the street, is that viable engineering-wise?
Right in here? Right here? Well, it is. It's definitely going to make the project more costly, because now we've got to dig. We'd have to dig through the common here. We'd have to pick up this conduit, dig through the common across Meeting House into that property.
Would you not bore?
No.
But aren't you digging now with that blue?
The duct bank, you have it designated as duct bank.
Right here?
Is that light tower?
Yeah, Light Tower's putting that
Are they
in.
putting redundant pipe in for you?
They are putting pipe in for us, yes.
Okay, so, and they're digging up Meeting House, so they're running redundant pipe down Meeting House as well for us?
Yes. Yeah, they're running
So
two.
all we'd really have to do is we'd have to, depending upon where our breakout is, whether it's down at 6 Meeting House, where Joe proposes, in the back of Brian Burke's, 325 grade, we'd have to break out. We have to do one break from the,
Yeah, our breakout right now, we had them put the breakout here, just because they started the project.
okay.
And we had to, we had to do something.
So everything that's blue is, we'll call existing, right? The pipe.
This,
With
yeah.
the breakout going into the common.
Yeah, that's what's being put in now. This right here, this piece right here is not existing.
Okay, but that seems like there's not a whole lot that would have to do.
No, that's a short piece there, yeah.
I'd personally rather see it somewhere along Meeting House than on our common.
In the end game, the ratepayers pay for this. Yes?
Sure.
Well,
Yep.
ratepayers.
Yeah.
So I guess as a town, what are we willing to sacrifice in the form of rates versus the aesthetic value of somewhat the reclaimed
Yeah.
common?
Right. Well, I guess if we didn't feel that there was impending failure here, we'd have more time. To buy property, town meeting, we'd have, negotiate a price and all that. It's quite a bit more involved. If we had a year or two, okay. But, on January 20th, that switch fails, IBM could be down for, it could be a week. So.
Anywhere on their property you can put it?
Well, not really, because we have to pick up this main line here. So there's really no, to pull that main line all the way down there doesn't really work, or pull it all the way down, to the driveway. And they only have, unfortunately, when IBM moved in, we offered them a second feed and they didn't take it. So they only have this one feed right here. We offered them another feed down by their other entrance on Great Road, and they wouldn't bite.
But there is a street
The
crossing there
town-owned
now.
parking lot on Stevens,
What's that?
the town-owned parking lot in Stevens,
Here?
it's all hardtop. I mean, it's not ideal, but is that feasible?
That's the common
Can you put it there?
It's a long way from.
Because you think of maintenance, getting to it and all that, I mean, that's usually the thing people don't think
Yeah.
about, the add-on.
What we're trying to do is, we're trying to utilize as much infrastructure that's already there. This infrastructure is already there, and there's spare conduit, okay? We're having this installed for us. They're putting that in while they have the road dug up. So we're trying to utilize as much infrastructure as we can so that we don't disturb the common. We don't have to.
What's the cost of putting this in now? What's your project cost for this path?
If this went right here,
Is it 100,000? Is it?
yeah, it's probably north of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably about 150 to 200,000. Just, we're looking at, $50 a foot, and it's the cost of the switch and everything.
So if you put it there now, and then a year from now, when you acquire the property, you move it, how much additional is that going to be the project?
Oh, you're saying, put it here and then move it over to here?
Yeah.
I don't know, we'd have to look at that.
I think you're hearing, Scott, that, the downtown, we developed a group to take a look at downtown. It's very difficult to say yes. I'm being quite honest with you. It really is. I understand, we're talking about aesthetics and we're talking about people's lives and businesses and all that. But, we've worked so hard. We just mentioned earlier how nice the downtown has been coming along. It's a tough one, buddy, you know what I mean? It really is. I think, the option that Joe put out on the table.
Well, let me propose this. How about if we make an agreement where we do this as a temporary measure? Because we're really, we're getting this put in anyway. That Light Tower has agreed to put that in for us. They're like, yeah, we got it all dug up, we'll just throw the conduit in for it. We got this put in. This piece here is the existing conduit that comes down here, there's a spare conduit, we break into that and turn it over to here. How about if we look at something like that on a temporary basis and then work toward a permanent solution? And, we can still landscape it and make it look as good as we can, but as long as everybody knows that it's a 1 or a 2 year agreement that now we move it somewhere else.
How soon would you be looking to, you say temporary, so how soon are you looking to do it?
Well, we want to do something this fall, before the ground freezes. We at least can get a cable in, I think, from here, through the switch to IBM, so that if this cable fails, we can backfeed IBM that way this winter.
So that's your objective, because you want to remove that switch, and we just do away with it, and that main feed going down the common?
Yeah, the feed is still going to come through the common, underground.
Yeah.
We'd end up replacing all the cable, get rid of that switch, and add add that switch. But what this does is it gives us a way to get to CVS, IBM, back feeding this way instead of this way. So in the middle of the winter, if this fails, we can feed that way.
Could you do, I mean, IBM didn't want to take a second line, so they didn't want to do a redundant system. But could you lay the pipe, lay the cable to do the redundant system without making the switch? If the switch fails, you've got everything laid, you can do a temporary service at that point, it can be down for a day. And then, at that point, tomorrow we can start the process of trying to find out if any of these abutters are options for us.
Right.
So if we have all the infrastructure in place in the event of a failure, everything's laid in the conduit,
Yeah.
we're ready to go.
Yeah.
The switch isn't there,
Yeah.
but we'd have to roll a switch in.
Well, I think I could probably meet you halfway on that, because the way the cable route goes, we have to have something to terminate here.
Pat.
So what we could do, I guess on a temporary basis, is put in what we call a junction cabinet, which is a small fiberglass cabinet. They're about that high and about that long.
Doghouse.
Yeah, and the cable would go through there and would be ready to feed IBM in case...
In the event of a failure.
In the event of a failure. And then
That'll
we
keep
can
the
work
cost
toward
down.
a permanent solution. We just sitting here tonight, I can't guarantee that anybody really wants to sell a piece of their property to put a switch in.
Okay.
Or they might say, yeah, we'll sell it, 250 grand, how's that? And we're like, oh, okay. It's twice the cost of the project or whatever. So, maybe when they redo the road here, we can end up putting conduit in and putting it down here. But that's a little bit down the road, and the problem is if we wait.
We don't know when the failure's going to happen.
That's right.
None of us have a crystal ball.
That's right. So, we could do something that isn't a switch, that is, a lot smaller. We could still landscape. You wouldn't even see it really. I think you could landscape around that pretty easily, and that would at least give us.
In the event of a failure.
Yeah. I mean.
A jumping off point.
I would rather not put it in the common either, but, to us, reliability is like number one, and these customers, if that failed, and we had to tell IBM that they were going to be out for 2 or 3 or 4 days, it would be a disaster.
In fact, that's a good segue, because in the perfect world, if you would execute the plan as designed right now, how long would power be off to IBM and the customers on that part of the feed?
On the switch off, on the switch on.
If you were to do this work.
Oh, it would be short, because we can get all this infrastructure in ahead of time.
Yep.
And then, they might be out.
Doing an overnight.
Yeah, doing overnight on them,
Okay.
As it is, we've tried to do maintenance on this line down here, and it takes 3 or 4 months just to get a 4-hour outage for them. Because they're running, data centers that are 24/7. And
We've certainly expressed the importance of aesthetics, but we're not ignorant also of the importance of the reliability, as you mentioned. And in fact, when Secretary of Energy was out here, the state, Mr. Beaton, it was held at IBM, the roundtable there. And certainly the site executive made a very big point about reliable electricity. How many times did he stomp his foot on that one, Keith?
Every time, and it's even when there's a brownout, and it causes a problem in how they recycle or how the
It's
recycling
amazing they
goes.
didn't want the second feed then, that boggles my mind.
we beat our head against the
You know
wall.
what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was, if you remember, they had that whole parking lot dug up.
Yeah.
And we said, put the even if you don't do
Just lay
anything
it.
right away,
Just lay the
put the
pipe.
conduit in. What's interesting is when Digital built that building, all the switch gear that's outside in the back is meant for a dual feed. They never put the dual feed in. But it's all there. All we have to do is get the cable to it, and they would have a dual feed with an automatic switch over and the whole bit. We just couldn't get them to do it. But yet they've been complaining ever since they've been there. So That's kind of where we're at, so, you know, maybe we can do something this fall on a temporary basis with the agreement to look for a better solution.
It has to be done, but if you went with a temporary,
I'd be more comfortable with that.
yeah, the doghouse, whatever you want to call it, that's smaller, I'd be in favor of that until you find another solution, because it has to get done. I really don't want to see a 6x6 box on that common.
Okay.
And I think if Jim can reach out to your contact with the state, mention our dilemma here, see what they can do about possibly giving Light Department a little heads up.
The project off yet again. You probably won't have a problem doing that at all. I just have, do you know what your separation has to be between natural gas and your wire?
It's 18 inches?
Yeah, typically we try to stay about 3 feet.
Because where you're talking about on the Tiernan property, I believe the gas main runs down
Sidewalk.
the edge of the sidewalk there. So if you're going in there, and it's, you know, a little, potential little bit of a problem.
Code's not 3 feet though, is it?
No.
It's 18.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
So do you want to grant temporary permission, or do you want to have Scott bring you back a revised plan next Monday night?
Well, I think, based on his requirement, I like the idea of the temporary plan at this point. That way there, at least you have something in case of failure.
Plus the road's open.
Plus the road's open.
Yeah.
We can,
It doesn't handcuff you completely.
in the agreement, we need to delineate the time as to what type of solution and whereabouts it will happen. But I think as Joe said, or Chuck, I think, said, we can start tomorrow to see if anybody's willing to have a small slice of property diced up.
We'd have to order the cable, and that's out, 6 to 8 weeks. So I think, the sooner we get started on this, the better. This kind of fell into our lap. It was pretty nice.
Yeah.
Because without that, we would have to do either this, something in the common or reroute it was going to be a lot bigger project.
But you have to order cable now anyway, correct?
Well,
If he moves forward with the project.
if you say,
Even if you execute it the way you first are presenting it to us, you have to order cable,
yes.
correct?
Yeah.
So the only difference at this point then is X number of feet of cable or X plus to a
Minus.
temporary location.
Well, yeah, if you said, no, you can't put anything in the common right now, we wouldn't order any cable because we got nowhere to put it.
I mean, store it when you say nowhere to put it.
Well, no, we don't have anywhere in the ground.
Not gonna lay it anywhere,
Okay.
install it.
All right, I guess, what's all this digging and conduit going on for then?
This blue right here?
Yes.
That's a company called Light Tower.
Got that.
That does internet,
It's fiber
internet
optics.
fiber.
I'm understanding that, as
Yeah.
to what they're doing, but I think I've heard you say a couple of times they're going to help you out.
Yes.
How are they helping you out?
They're putting conduit in for us while they dig up the road,
Okay.
which is
They're giving us a
huge.
path to put cable into.
Trust me, I understand that.
Okay.
But I don't understand the bit about, well, we're not going to order the cable.
If there's no place to put the transformer, eventually, you gotta
Yeah, if
find
we-
it out.
Right.
Let's tie up the funds.
Right, if we don't have, if, right now, the way we had them set it up like this, so if we can't put anything in the common there, we really don't have anywhere to run the cable to.
All right. You know at the least, the blue lines you have there, absent where that switch is,
Mhm.
and that's going to be 25 feet maybe each direction, ballpark?
Right here,
Yeah.
yeah, across the street, yeah.
All right, and I'm not going to do public math on the rest of the linear feet that would be involved in those blue lines. But and actually, it looks like you'd almost use less cable if you were to put it on the corner property. But we're talking on the margin, 20 feet here, 30 feet there is all. But as far as the total linear feet as designed, what is it?
They just don't want to tie up the funds in the cable, that's the bottom line.
Well, yeah, I
But
mean,
I'm trying to scope this a little bit.
At $1 a foot, we kind of have to think ahead. If we end up putting a switch down here, now somehow we gotta get that tied back into here eventually. And what does that involve? You know, we're kind of getting free trenching here, and we're trying to take advantage of that.
So you may pay a little more cable because it's a longer run, but you're
Yeah.
eliminating the cost of all the trenching, conduit, and everything else.
I mean, the least expensive way for us to do it would be put the switch right here.
Come straight across.
Because all the cables, all the conduit's already in. And just put the switch in and replace all the cable and be done with it. I think this is a much better location than that.
Yeah.
So that being said, I think if we can come to a compromise and agree that this is a temporary location, and then we can work toward something, more permanent, whether it be, here or, here or across here or whatever, that might be better.
Is it best, now you certainly have the sense of us, that's what we're thinking here, give the opportunity for a week to really put an engineering solution to it, versus just, as we've kind of been brainstorming it up to this point, apply cost to it, so that you could come back and say, it adds X number of dollars to the project, and maybe we swallow aesthetics if it's X number of dollars, or we say, go ahead anyway, and expend the extra money.
We can agenda you
Want
next
to come back next
meeting.
Monday night. You're going to come here anyway to hear about help us with stormwater.
I can't wait.
And that way it's
Thank Corey.
general for us.
Corey put it on my desk, I'm putting it back.
I know it.
So I think is what Paul was saying, just if you can kind of answer those other questions, maybe have a switch placed on that little corner.
Here?
Yeah, no, or even up the other end.
Okay.
You
Well,
know.
who owns this land here?
The empty
The one that was,
house?
Yeah.
James Butterworth.
The empty house should come down. Yeah, yeah.
James Butterworth.
So, what I would say whether we put the switch here or put it here, this portion doesn't change.
Right.
Okay? This is the least costly position because we have cable, we have conduit right here we can tie in. Once you put it here, now you've got to tie in here. Or if you put it here, you've got to somehow tie all the way back this way or this way. So, this is the least expensive option right now.
Questions?
Yeah, I want to see Jimmy. Go ahead, Jim.
If you're looking at, I'll just call it the Butterworth property, if you're gonna try and acquire the property, you're probably gonna make them more non-conforming than he already is versus an easement that he still owns the land, but he can't technically use it, but where Tiernan's property is a little bit bigger, you're still, if you're trying to buy the property, you're gonna reduce their size, because they're gonna need technically a pretty good footprint to get in there to work and do service to it. You need, what, 15?
Well, a switch is 6 by 6, and then you need space around
10
it.
square.
You need probably 10 feet around it to get in and operate the switch and that sort of thing, yeah, so it's, it's not there that we would be there, hopefully very little. We might not be there in, 10 years, but it's,
The transformer that's there is on a pole at Butterworth's property? No? It's on the ground?
down here, you mean?
At 6 Meeting House, that's a transformer, right? So a transformer right there, just,
It's a switch gear, I think.
Oh, this right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pole-mounted switch,
It's up,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, yeah. This is the actual, it rises up here,
okay.
and it heads that way, so that's a pole-mounted switch.
Okay. Because you have underground and
So-
overhead there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So comments?
There's a garden in.
Can just stand up.
Tell
us who you are.
Linda Giannetta with Legacy Garden Club. We did a lot of work on that side of the common, and this is like really the word temporary, just, I was told that that other box on the other side of the common was temporary. It's been there for years, and it's ugly. We've been trying to camouflage it. And I'd hate to see this right in front of the clock and right near our president's garden. I mean, that's like a feature area. But there's another garden, I can show you.
Right, somewhere right around here, it's a big garden. If it could go like right in the middle of that, it's already landscaped and it wouldn't be seen.
Where's that on here?
Looks like it's right
It's,
here.
yeah, it faces King Street.
Yep.
It's
In the common.
quite large, yeah, it's about probably 20 feet long by 10 feet wide.
So,
There's all sorts of plantings, bushes and flowers.
so you're saying put the big one there, or just the temporary one?
No, I'm saying even the big one. I mean, if there isn't, I'd rather see it there than, you know, right there.
Where was the other garden you were talking about over here?
Okay, so the clock is right around here, correct?
Yeah, it's like right there, yeah.
Right, and our president's garden is right here,
After the meeting,
facing
when you're all here,
Knox.
just go
Okay.
across the street.
And then there's another one right here.
Okay. Would you like another garden up here? A light garden?
We just took out bushes there.
To build a grotto.
Huge bushes, we could have.
We got money. It could be quite a garden.
Is there any other smaller switch that you can put there besides this 10 by 10 pad, 6 by 6
Yeah,
box?
they're all, I mean, there's a few options to get them a little bit shorter, but they're all about, footprints about 6 by 6.
Really?
You know, it's just because of the voltage and you know, it's just, they need room.
So,
So, Scott, can I just ask, why didn't you jump on her offer to use this other garden on the common? I'm trying to, I missed that.
We could. I didn't hear anyone else.
Back onto something else. And I'm
I didn't
like,
hear anyone
"Oh,
else.
She gave you a big
I
offer."
didn't hear anyone else jumping on it. No, that's not, I mean, we could use that, because we do have, obviously, the conduit.
I gotta
comes
see it.
through.
I can't comment. I went to where we saw it, so I don't want to comment on it
Till you see it.
till I actually see it.
Okay.
Nick, is this pretty accurate?
So next Monday.
The way that
So
conduit
next Monday
goes?
night.
No, it probably hugs King Street more.
So it comes down this way more, or?
that's the underground?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, that's on King Street. That's.
Well, yeah, but it's kind of across the common. I think it goes back towards
Oh, I
Arches
see
and
what you
then.
mean, gotcha.
It goes this way and then
We
down
want
that
to set
way.
up a site visit.
Yeah.
We can locate it.
Next Monday night, too.
That would
Can
be
you guys
good.
flag it
Yeah. Absolutely.
on the common?
Yep.
So that we can walk it and
That'd be a great idea.
see where it is?
Put some stakes down.
I'll give you a tour.
Yeah, but if you could put stakes
Yeah,
down
so
in
we know
that
where the
garden
common
you're
is.
talking about,
Below the common?
Yeah, we can do that.
then we could all go down and take a look at it.
And what is the size of the pad out of the ground? I mean, 4 inches, 6 inches, 10 inches?
Typically, we put like a 6-inch.
So you're above the ground,
It's
6
just
inches?
a fiberglass green pad. It's up about 6-8 inches, and then the.
That looks like concrete.
Yeah, that's a specialized. That's actually a manhole
So
under
it's
that
like the HVAC
Okay.
That's a
isolation
manhole.
pads?
We typically use just a green fiberglass pad on
Okay,
these,
all right.
with about an 6-8
So that
inch
was,
reveal
that's
on
what I
it.
was talking about.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
commercial installation.
All right, so, I mean, if you can get down and flag it, we can take a look at it, have the garden club there just to talk about it. I don't want to comment on it right now because I don't know where it is. So next Monday.
So do you think if the garden club was okay with that location?
Let's take a look at it first.
Be okay with it?
Let's take a look at it first, and that way there the board can go down and take a peek and see where it's actually at.
You know, if they're not okay with it, if the garden club is not okay with it, you don't stand a chance.
I know that.
But you're getting closer, it sounds like.
Sure.
I'm glad something.
We have, when is our meeting Monday?
Next Monday night, 21st.
6:30? So how about like at 6 o'clock we meet down at the Common
Walk on Monday?
on Monday? Just do a quick walkthrough?
Sounds good.
So just post it that way?
Yep, we'll post it as a site visit.
Yeah, we can.
And we'll
meet you
have it
down
as
there
a,
and-
You call it a
have it
field
as
trip?
a first item
Field
on
trip
the
sounds
agenda.
much more fun.
What?
I'll put a soda can in tinfoil.
All right, so we'll see you 6 o'clock next week.
Yeah,
All right.
that sounds
And,
good, thank you.
Get it flagged.
Did we get
and
the
we're good
park
to
on
go.
Meeting House Road?
Can we get what?
Do we get the
Park on
park on
Meeting
Meeting
House?
House Road?
If it's open by then.
Jeff, Madison left.
I got another question for you.
I do too.
Okay.
Right across from my offices.
Yes.
There's a street lamp there that's been out for a year, and they've been there 3 or 4 times, and they can't get it working. Is that ever gonna work?
Well, the problem we have in the
It'll be working by
common
6 o'clock
is,
next month.
This pickup truck keeps backing
we
into it.
have direct buried underground cable that was put in there by the town, maybe in '83, I'm not sure. Direct buried, and there's 3 or 4 lights that are out.
Tell Light Tower to put some more conduit in.
So I don't know, in fact, I kind of asked Keith, and he bounced it around the town, whose responsibility is it to replace that, all that cable? And
How bad do you want that transformer in that garden?
we can make a deal.
Make it
worth their while.
We can make a deal. But yeah, I think, Joe, there's 3 or 4 of them that are out, yeah. Yeah.
Joe, if you can secure a 40-year lease on a plot of your land there, then first it's...
Anything else?
I got a question for you, just
Yeah.
just relative to getting conduit put into open ground. Is that a practice? I know that Littleton Electric has a lot of poles, and we get leases for anybody being up on the poles, but if we own the conduit, we can still get leases for anybody that goes into the pipe, right? Do we do redundant pipes whenever the street's open?
Typically, we don't put in pipe for anyone else. We just put in our own. We typically put in electric pipe, and we'll put a smaller pipe in for like a communication line. If we ever needed to run
Just run a
fiber
little
or
tape and
whatever
just
like
leave it.
that. But we typically don't put extra pipe in and lease it out. But, typically in a subdivision or a new, the point, all that conduits that's going in there, we have our conduit, the phone company has their conduit.
That's all through the developer.
Exactly.
But in any of our roads, once they're open, if anybody's putting any conduit in,
Right.
I think it'd be a good practice to lay some extra pipe and
Yeah.
potential revenue source.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we typically will put in enough for the light
Our own use,
department.
yeah.
And then communication, typically Verizon is right with us putting in pipe too. And then they do all the communication, whether it's Comcast or whatever, they typically have to, by law, they have to provide it to another carrier.
It's the monopoly, yeah.
Right, so.
Antitrust stuff,
Yep.
yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank
See
you.
next Monday.
You got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, folks, promotion.
That was it.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Move in the second, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good night. Mr. Tacos.
Aye.
Wait till next week.
Brochure.